The wind came knifing down from the shivering sea, rattling the shutters of Winterfell like the breath of some great ice-hard god. In Eddard Stark's solar the hearth roared, yet the cold seeped in at the corners, as though determined to make its counsel heard. The Lord of Winterfell stood by the narrow arrow slit, fingers laced behind his back, gray eyes fixed on the dusk-blue sky and the white ravens wheeling above the broken battlements. Beneath him the first snows of autumn lay light upon the roofs and ramparts, a hush of hammered silver that damped sound and stilled the courtyard. He had sent the raven before dawn, sealed with the direwolf sigil and the words he had weighed 100 times in the sleepless night. I am honored, my brother, yet I must remain where my duty lies. Winter is coming. The words seemed pitifully small set against the tides he felt stirring, but they were true, and for Stark truth was an iron that never bent. Robert would ride south without him, south to the warmth of King's Landing, to a court buzzing with ambition and silk-soft intrigue. The thought left Ned hollow, as though he had torn loose some piece of himself and flung it after the departing king. Footsteps creaked outside. The door opened and Cailin slipped in, drawing her shawl close. You did send it? I did. You look as though the raven carried your heart away with it. Perhaps it did, Ned admitted, offering a rueful smile. Robert will not understand. Robert Baratheon understands more than most give him credit, even when he lets his laughter hide it, Kat said, laying a hand upon her husband's arm. He will curse and drink a cask of Arbor Red, and then he will remember that you were ever the one man who spoke to him plain. He will forgive. And the hand's chain? He will place it around some other neck. Too heavy a chain for any man, but heavier still for whoever bears it now. Ned shook his head. I pray he chooses wisely, and I pray he listens wisely. Caitlin's eyes, Tully blue, held winter's own clarity. Yet whatever storms rage in the south, they are not ours, at least not yet. Ned drew a long breath, tasting the scent of wood smoke and snow. Aye, our place is here. That night the castle settled beneath a sky hard with stars. The gods wood whispered with black leaves, and beneath the ancient heart tree Ned knelt, blade of ice-crusted grass biting his knees. The weirwood's face regarded him, eyes red as the last ebb of embers, mouth a gash of sorrow. He spoke softly of oaths and burdens, of brothers lost and kings beloved, of the children who played in the towers above. When he rose, frost veined the knees of his breeches and his breath steamed like a ghost about him. Beyond the moss-slick walls Maester Luwin shuffled through the library tower, his lamp casting golden circles across parchment maps. He marked each village depleted by last year's fever, counted every bushel of grain stored in Winterfell's granaries. Winter, true winter, might descend within moons. Luwin feared its teeth would be sharp. At the forge Mikken hammered a new length of chainmail, sparks spitting like orange fireflies. Ice was in the metal, too, northern steel that rang with a flinty note, promising neither vanity nor mercy. Up on the battlements, Ser Roderick Castle drilled the guards, his voice rough as gravel. The gates of the King's Road would remain shut till dawn. Wolves had been sighted, and worse things whispered of beneath the trees. And in the broken tower young Bran climbed as he always had, toes gripping stone, arms spread to the night. Moonlight silvered his small face, eyes shining with the thrill of height. The wind tugged at him, playful one moment, perilous the next, and yet on this night no golden knight lounged upon the bridge to send him tumbling. Cersei Lannister rested far away in the Red Keep, ignorant that the boy yet lived to climb. One fortnight later a different raven beat its wings against the gray. Its message bore the great stag sigil impressed in wax. Robert's own hand, sprawling and wine-stained. Brother, 7 hells, but you are a stubborn wolf. Very well, I'll not beg. The council bows and preens and whispers names enough for 24 hands. I will choose one who can stomach their prattle, though I doubt half of them could carry your sword. Serve your snows and your gods, Ned. I'll serve mine, wine, women, and this damnable throne. Yet if winter truly comes, remember you have a king who calls you brother. Send what help you may when the time is ripe, and I will send what gold and steel I can spare when I am able. Sing me a song of summer, Stark. I have nearly forgotten its tune. Robert. Ned read the letter thrice, the edges softening beneath his thumb. Cailin murmured that it was kinder than she had feared, though the words carried the ache of distance. Rob, near grown at 15, asked what it meant for them. For now, Ned said, it meant the North would remain as it was, untouched by southern plots, bound only to its own stark necessities. But the world has a way of sliding its shadows beneath any door, no matter how thick the oak. Across the narrow sea, in the swelter of the Dothraki Sea, a dragon stirred in a cradle of pearl and smoke, and its dream brushed the wind, unseen but ominous. In King's Landing, Varys listened to footsteps across the marble floors and measured each with soft eyes. Peter Baelish smiled into his cups and stacked coin on coin, wagering futures. Queen Cersei fingered green velvet as though it were a throat she longed to crush. Jaime polished the gilded lion on his breastplate, thinking of battles past and those yet to come. And in the Eyrie, Lisa Arryn sat in a high tower, rocking a pale-faced boy, whispering to stone walls that had heard stranger confessions. She knew secrets of a hand who had died grasping for truth, and her fear gnawed at her breast like a weasel in a sack. Yet Winterfell heard nothing of that. Not yet. The ravens carried only small news. Market prices in White Harbor, a frostbitten harvest near Deepwood Moat. Unquiet rumors that the Night's Watch bled men to deserters and wildlings both. Jon Snow felt the tug of those rumors keenly. Bastard he might be, but his heart beat fierce at any talk of duty at the end of the world. Months ago he had meant to ride south with his father, to wonder at the red walls of the capital and the tourney fields. Now he spent his days sparring in the yard, wooden sword ringing off steel as Roderick shouted pitfalls and parries. By night he sat with Ned Stark, who had come from the wall on fresh patrol to warn of darker skies. The dead do not sleep, nephew. They are only waiting for us to forget them. Benjen's visit lingered long enough for ghost stories and grimmer advice. Then one dawn he was gone again, his black brothers clattering northward. Jon watched till the last banner vanished between the pines. Ghost the direwolf pressed his flank to Jon's knee, a silent oath that he, at least, would not leave. The first true blizzard came early, burying the King's Road beneath drifts taller than a horse. Trade caravans failed to arrive. In the villages, small folk pressed flax oil into horn lanterns and shut their doors against the howl. Winterfell stores would hold, but only if carefully portioned. Ned dispatched men to each holdfast with grain and a stern ledger of allotments. Food is steel, he told Rob, who rode beside him cloaked in snowfox fur. We guard it as stoutly as our gates. A pity steel cannot grow, Rob mused, or melt into bread. Ned's smile bent like an icicle under wind. But it can protect those who plant the seeds. He reined to a halt by a frozen stream, its surface cracked with spiderweb fractures. Listen, only the wind answered, a low moan through the pine boughs. That is the voice of winter. It asks no boon, grants no mercy. We stand against it or we perish. Rob nodded, snow rhyming his auburn hair. He looked older than his years, Ned thought, the weight of the North settling on his shoulders imperceptibly day by day. Back in Winterfell's great hall, Bran and Rickon chased each other round the carved pillars while Arya fenced with sticks against a scowling Sansa who preferred needlework to bruises. Their laughter rebounded off stone, fierce and bright. Ned watched from the dais, heart tight. He wondered if the laughter of the Red Keep had ever rung so true. Perhaps long ago, in the time before shadows lengthened. But now, he doubted it. That night, a horn sounded from the gatehouse. Riders approached from the south bearing crimson cloaks edged in gold. Lannister men. Snow powdered their helms, their breath gusting through faceplates like smoke from braziers. Ser Roderick welcomed them warily. They bore a letter sealed with the king's hand and countersigned by Lord Tywin Lannister, bidding hospitality for his envoys who carried matters of the realm's coin to the northern lords. Ned broke the seal with a thumb, eyes narrowing at the words. Assessments for the royal treasury. In truth, Tywin's men sought gold owed on old loans to the crown, loans Ned had never taken. He met them in the solar where tapestries muted the drafts, Cailin at his side, Luwin recording each syllable. Coins clinked and compliments were traded like sharp daggers disguised as flourishes of courtesy. By the time the envoys departed 3 days later, Ned's patience was worn thin as vellum. He had paid what trifling sum was indisputable and contested the rest with parchment proof. Yet he sensed another game beneath the numbers, a testing of the wolf's temper if not a goad to draw blood. When the red cloaks vanished beyond the last river, Ned stood atop the gatehouse and watched until the horizon swallowed them. A chill deeper than the snow crept into him. The south stretches its claws even here, he thought, and each claw bears a lion's gold. Deep winter set its teeth. The Godswood Pond froze solid enough that Arya dared to skate upon it with makeshift bone blades, arms windmilling while Jon steered her from tumbles. Robb and Theon Greyjoy hunted elk through knee-deep powder, returning flushed and laughing beneath antlered trophies. Bran invented stories of giants that strode out of the mountains at night, their footfalls shaking the walls. Even dour Septa Mordain allowed the children an extra hour by the hearth, reciting tales of Brandon the Builder and the sorcerous shape of the wall. Yet in the Maester's chambers scrolls piled like fallen leaves, each bearing tidings more disquieting. Sellsword companies swelling in Pentos, the Golden Company on the move, pirates thick as gulls off the Broken Arm, wildlings massing. Luwin's quill scratched warnings in tidy script. Numbers, Alex, numbers, but numbers were breathless things when set against the guttural roar of 1,000 throats beyond the wall. One Eva raven arrived clotted with frost, bearing a single black ribbon. The Night's Watch, calling for men. Benjen Stark's scribble rode beneath the official plea, "Brother, worse than raiders. We have lost 2 rangers east of Shadow Tower. Tracks unlike any beast I know. Send men if you can." Ned read it thrice, his breath a plume in the dim light. To send men north meant fewer swords guarding the villages, fewer hands hunting game. Yet to refuse his brother's call, Ned could not. That very hour he summoned Ser Roderick, Jory Castle, and the Castellan. 10 men would ride under Jory's command, seasoned spears all. Jon Snow begged to go, burning with purpose, but Ned held him back. "Your place is here until you are sworn, and that day is not yet." Jon bowed stiffly, the set of his jaw flinty. He spent that night in the kennels with Ghost curled about him, staring at the black sky. As the party rode out the gates the next dawn, snow rising in pennons behind their horses, Cailin stood beside her lord. "Will it be enough?" she asked. "Enough for a scouting, if the gods are kind," Ned answered. "But seldom are they so kind." The turn of the year saw white skies and stillness so deep that a dropped pin would echo like a bell. Then, as though the very silence cracked, news burst like a storm. Terrible, bright, and impossible. Daenerys Targaryen, last daughter of the Dragon Kings, was with child across the sea, and Viserys Targaryen was dead. Ned listened as Luwin read the raven's words. The Maester expected outrage or alarm, but Ned felt only the distant roll of fate's wheel. Targaryen blood, once thought quenched, now glows anew. Somewhere in Pentos or beyond, a dragon stirred not in dream but in life. He wondered what that would mean for Robert, for the realm, for the long march of seasons. More ravens fluttered in. News of justs and feasts at King's Landing. Yet beneath the perfumes lay rot. Talk of debts, of hands' councils fracturing into bitter factions, of Varys little birds singing of plots in alleys. Ned read each parchment, his brow a line of iron. Robert was a warrior, not a banker. Tywin was both. And Cersei, God save any who thought her merely a queen. One night in the solar, Robb watched his father fold the latest letter into flame. "Are we safe here in the north?" he asked. "Safe is a word for fools," Ned said gently. "No place is safe, only held." He rose and fastened the cloak at his throat. "Come, we will patrol the walls." They walked the battlements, lanterns swinging golden arcs. Snowflakes feathered down, alighting upon fur and mail. Between the merlins the night yawned vast and black. "Tell me of the kings you've known," Robb said, voice hushed. "I have known 3, Ned answered after a time. A madman who burned his own blood, a boy who died with lion claws in him, and a friend who wielded a hammer mighty enough to shatter kingdoms, yet finds crowns heavier than hammers. And you chose to stay here. I chose to keep faith with my own gods, to guard what is mine to guard. Robb's breath smoked. And if the south turns its swords northward, then we stand. The snows defend us as well as any moat. Ned rested a gloved hand on his son's shoulder. But steel must be ready beneath the snow. Spring should have come with soft thaws and the first shy blossoms along the gift. Yet the cold lingered like a debt unpaid. The 10 men Ned sent to the wall had not returned, nor any raven bearing their fate. On a pale dawn, Ned strode into the godswood with Ghost padding silent beside, Jon following at a respectful distance. The heart tree's red eyes glistened with sap. Ned drew his long sword ice and laid it across the roots. "Old gods," he murmured. "If I have been blind, open my eyes. If I have been foolish, give me wisdom. Let me know what winter brings." The leaves whispered a language older than man, and for a heartbeat Ned felt small. Smaller than a drop of dew trembling on frost-speared grass, smaller than a word in a song no bard recalled. He stood thus until his knees numbed. When he rose, Jon spoke into the hush. "Father, will you send me to the wall when next Benjen calls?" Ned studied the boy's face, no longer a boy, not entirely. The sharp lines of manhood were beginning to shape him. "If that is still your wish," he said at length. "But remember, vows are iron. There is no turning from them." "I will not turn," Jon said, and his eyes were black mirrors of snow-lit night. They returned to the keep to find Maester Luwin awaiting with a parchment bound in crimson ribbon. King's Landing again. Robert's seal dangled, cracked in transit, the wax spiderwebbed. Ned broke it with a sigh. The words within were inked in haste. "Edmure Tully calls banners against the Lannisters. Some quarrel over the Trident's tolls. Lord Tywin moves half the rock strength west of the Blackwater. Cersei claims it is mere exercise. I think otherwise. The council flails like fish on a dock. They tell me debt is a tide that will drown us all. I tell them a stag can swim. Gods, Ned. I drink and rage and still the debts grow. None of this is your burden, you will say. Yet the realm was forged with your help and may shatter without it. Send wise men, send grain, send what you can spare. I will owe you, and Robert Baratheon repays his debts in gold and in friendship." Ned closed his eyes. Snow skittered against the window like restless fingers. Friendship, yes. But friendship could not fill Winterfell's larders nor shield the villages if another harsh season struck. To send grain south would thin his own stores dangerously. Yet to refuse would be to let the realm's wounds fester. Wounds that might spill fever and fire northward sooner or later. That night he walked the battlements alone, pondering balances. Honor and prudence, friendship and duty. The life of one realm and the lifeblood of another. Above him the aurora shimmered green across the vault of night like a dragon's breath. He remembered Lyanna's cry, the tang of blood in the Tower of Joy, promises he had kept, promises he had broken, and in that shivering light felt the weight of every choice he had ever made. In the deep hours of darkest night, the gates clanged open. Torchlight flared, horns blared. Riders stumbled in, one half-carried between two mounts. Snow-encrusted black cloaks, Night's Watch. Ned descended the steps 2 at a time, boots skidding. The wounded man's face was gray, his eyes wide, seeing nothing. Frost rimed his beard like old ash. "What happened?"
Ned demanded.
"Dead things?" rasped the man to his left, voice broken. Jory Castle fell. Shadows with blue eyes tore Lord Benjen's steed." He coughed, spattering pink on snow. Another ranger choked on sobs. The wounded man convulsed and went still. Ghost bared his teeth, a low growl rising. Ned's heart hammered like a blacksmith's anvil. He knelt beside the corpse. The skin was ice cold, but deeper, beneath. A colder chill yet seemed to seep. "Get the body to the cold cellars," he ordered. "Chain it if you must." He had heard the old stories, the nightmares of his forebears. Never had he believed them, not truly. But belief mattered little when the dead rode into your yard. He turned to the surviving brothers. "Speak," and they spoke, of a forest silent as tomb air, of shapes dancing between trees, of eyes like frozen fire, of Benjen Stark vanished in that dark. The men trembled as they spoke. One swooned. Ned's soul felt carved hollow by each word. When at last silence fell, only the wind outside sighed. He gathered his household that dawn, faces pale beneath flickering torches. Cailin clutching her cloak, Robb rigid as a spear, Jon drawn and shadow-eyed, Maester Luwin mumbling prayers, Theon restless, Arya white-knuckled, Sansa clutching needlework forgotten. "We face an enemy older than any man alive," Ned told them. "If Benjen lives, we must find him. If he does not, we must avenge him, and guard against what hunts in his stead." Ser Roderick set jaw, hand upon hilt. We ride," Ned confirmed. "But not all. Winterfell cannot stand empty." Robb stepped forward. "I will lead, father." Jon's protest flashed in dark eyes, but Ned shook his head. "You will remain, Robb. The North must have a Stark in Winterfell. I will ride north with trusted men." Caitlin's breath caught, but she did not plead. She had wed a man who wore honor like a second skin. She knew its price. Preparations flew swift as ravens. Steel was sharpened, furs packed. Jon came to his father's chamber before dawn, ghost at heel. "If I cannot ride to the watch, let me ride with you." "You are needed here," Ned said. "Robb will rule in my stead, and he will need his brother's counsel." Jon's gaze burned. "A bastard's counsel?" "A Stark's," Ned said, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Blood alone does not shape a man. The choices he makes do that." "Us to stand by your brother." Jon bowed, though stiffly. "I will see you returned, and I will see your uncle found." Ned turned to the map spread upon the table. The wild lay vast and white beyond the wall, hard country where maps became mere guesses. Yet guesses were all they had. 70 riders set out into gray dawn, direwolf banners snapping. Cailin watched until the column dwindled to ink strokes on the snow. The hooves left dark wounds that wind soon erased. It was as though Winterfell itself bled, and the sky hurried to staunch the flow lest too much life leak away. Robb wore gray, but to Caitlin's eyes he seemed a shard of winter steel, cold, bright, unbending. He convened councils, tallied stores, drilled guards. Jon moved at his side, a silent shadow save when Ghost padded after. Bran followed wherever he could, begging lessons in sword grips and sigils. Sansa kept to the sept, praying for gentle ends. Arya chased cats and practiced thrusts in forgotten corridors. But the real enemy was time. Days stretched without word. Snowstorms howled down the King's Road. Ravens grew scarce. Some never arrived. One evening a blackbird beat its wings against the rookery hatch, near dead. Its message half torn, blotched with blood. Robb read it thrice, lips tight. Then he strode to the great hall, slamming the parchment upon the oaken table. "Lannisters move against Riverrun," he told those assembled. "Lord Tywin marches with 3 banners, and the Golden Tooth spews swords. Mother's kin stand alone." Caitlin's breath fled her. "My brother will hold, but if the Rock wants the Trident, they will come in force," Theon finished grimly. Robb's eyes found Caitlin's. "We cannot help both father and Edmure." Silence pooled thick. Maester Luwin coughed. "A small host might be sent south," he ventured. "Enough to show the North stands with the Tullus. And if father meets death beyond the wall?" Arya blurted. "Who will rescue him?" Jon laid a hand on her shoulder. Robb bowed his head. "I am torn in two," he said quietly, "to east and to south, and I am yet half-grown." Cailin rose then, spine straight as a spear. "Your father rode north for blood and honor. Our kinsmen fight for hearth and home. I will ride to Riverrun in your stead, Robb. Let the Lannisters answer a sister's wrath." Robb blinked. "Mother, no. I was Tully born," she said. "I know the river's moods, the people, the holdfasts. A Tully banners other Tullus better than any Stark. You would ride into war. His voice cracked at the edge. I have lived with war these 15 years. Her hand brushed his cheek. And war has lived in my heart since the day Ned rode south to lift Robert's banners. She smiled, brittle as ice on a pond. This time, my son, I will meet it on my own horse. Robb swallowed. Then I hold the north. Jon stepped forward. You will not be alone, he told Cailin. I will ride as your guard. Her gaze flickered. Old hurts glimmered like frost. She had never loved the boy she thought her husband's betrayal. Yet now, his eyes met hers steady as any son's. At last she inclined her head. Then you shall ride beside me, and pray the gods we all ride home. Beyond the wall, Ned Stark found nothing of gods save the white silence, and what horrors stirred beneath. They rode past ruined way stations, their fires cold, doorways rimed in white. Trees loomed like petrified bones, bark gray, limbs clawing at the sky. The tracks that led them twisted and faded, sometimes swallowed whole by drifts. Then one moonless night they found a body nailed to a weirwood, its flesh pale as candle wax, eyes frozen blue. Beside it a dire wolf pelt hung flayed, crimson banner of dread. Jory Castle lay in a shallow grave of ice, hands cleaved, mouth stuffed with snow. Ned knelt, and the cold cut so deep he feared he would never feel warmth again. He spoke no prayer, words turned brittle and broke. He rose, an unspoken oath burning in his veins. On the 5th day they glimpsed torches flickering leagues ahead on the Milkwater's frozen skin. Shadowed forms ringed a cluster of survivors, Benjen Stark among them, black cloak tattered but eyes fierce. As Ned's host thundered into the torchlight, shapes fled. Things tall and thin with limbs like splintered spears, faces white as moonlit ash. When steel met them, ice exploded. The creatures screamed like glass shattering. Fire was the only blade they feared, and so they retreated into the night, leaving their wounded to melt like frost hoar in dawn's first heat. Benjen clasped Ned's forearm, bloodied but unbowed. You should not have come, he rasped, though relief shone in his eyes. Ned only shook his head. A Stark keeps his brother. Around them the men set torches to every corpse, man and monster alike. Blue eyes winked out in crackling sparks. The stench of burning rot rose. Snowflakes drifted to smolder in the flames, as though even winter wept. That night, in a makeshift camp, Benjen spoke of a host massing farther north. Dead things moving in silence after sundown, guided by pale shadows on the wind. They have a purpose, he said, voice hoarse. They drive the wildlings south, swell their ranks with each life they steal, and they fear our fires dwindling.
Ned liste ned. Jaw clenched.
Then we must bring those fires home. Dawn bled red across the snow. The host rode south with survivors in tow, Jory's sword bound beside the Lord of Winterfell. 2 days into the ride, a raven swooped, lighting upon Ned's gauntlet. Its message was brief. Tully banners raised. Lannisters across the Red Fork. Cailin rides to Riverrun. Cold steel slid into Ned's gut. The Game of Thrones played on, its pieces scattered, while beyond the wall a darker game unfolded, unseen by those moving their bright golden knights. He quickened the pace, the horses heaving steam like dragons, hooves drumming the frost-bound earth. Each league southward felt like sand running through an hourglass whose glass might soon shatter. At last, on a morning veiled in blue mist, the towers of Winterfell lifted from the snowline. Ravens cawed, wolves howled. Ned felt the stone of the gatehouse beneath his palm and knew home again, yet none of its warmth. Robb met him in the courtyard, youth tempered into iron. They embraced briefly. Words were arrows they could not spare. Mother rides, Robb murmured, south and war, and winter rides north, Ned answered. We stand between 2 storms. Ghost prowled the snowy yard, hackles high. In the great hall fires blazed, stew bubbled, bread warmed. Normalcy fought to reclaim its seat, yet the air tasted of flint. One spark from a blade, one ember from a hearth, and all might burn or freeze. That night Ned laid Jory's sword upon the high table. "For the dead," he told those who gathered, "and for the living we must save." He spoke of shadows walking, of eyes like blue suns, of a wall thin as hope itself. Some scoffed, others paled. But when he finished, silence held the hall like a clenched fist. "At dawn," he declared, "riders will depart to every holdfast. We will raise the banners of the north. Grain and men will march to the wall. Fires will be lit in every village. And ravens will fly to the Eyrie, to White Harbor, to Riverrun. The realm must know the old tales live again." He looked to Luwin. "Send word to King's Landing as well. Tell Robert we ride against the true darkness." Luwin dipped his quill. "Will the South believe?" Ned's eyes were storms beneath ice. Whether they believe matters less than whether they act. Robb placed his hand upon the table beside his father's. Jon placed his beside Robb's. One by one the captains followed until the wood vanished beneath steel-scarred palms. Snow hissed against the shutters, the wind rattled like chains, and somewhere in the wild a horn of ice sounded, faint but inexorable. Winter had come, and the north stood ready, alone if need be, but unbroken. In the quiet before dawn, Ned Stark closed his eyes and saw the gods I weep red leaves, saw dragons coiling over a sea of flame, saw a stag drenched in blood staggering upon a golden crown. But beneath those visions a colder dream unfurled. A land without sun, where the only warmth was the heat of swords clashing and the only light burned blue. He woke with the taste of snow on his tongue and the certainty that every choice had led him here, to Winterfell, to winter, to war. And as the sun edged above the frosted battlements, bleak and bloodless, Eddard Stark wrapped his cloak tight, stepped onto the ramparts, and watched the wolves of the north gather at his heel, for the long night and whatever lay beyond. The air over Winterfell tasted of scented pine pitch and distant smoke, that curious mixture born of high hearth fires and the endless forest stretching like a pelt around the castle. Eddard Stark rose before dawn each morning now, pacing the battlements while most of the keep still dozed beneath wolfskin quilts. From the east tower he could see the King's Road winding away under its new white burial shroud. From the west he watched a second, more secret road, the slow curl of mist over the Wolfswood, scouting parties threading its gloom in search of sign that the dead still marched. Some mornings the mist lay harmless and silver. Others it seemed to rear and twist, taking on shapes too tall, too thin, as though carving knives of hoarfrost had ventured south to sculpt the fog. He would stay out until the sun's first blade showed, red as memories of Summerhall, then descend to the great hall where Robb held audience in his stead. There he listened, a silent pillar while his heir weighed quarrels. A bending fence line that angered a crofter. A scuffle between blacksmith's boy and baker's apprentice. Hother Umber's demand for more grain in exchange for bringing 50 spears to the wall come thaw. Robb's judgments were spare and honest. The boy ill-liked pomp. Ned watched each word he spoke, each swallow of uncertainty, and felt a curious pride twist within. Pride and fear at how swiftly a lad must learn when winter gathers teeth. Southward, hoofbeats drummed a different music. Cailin Stark rode with 24 men-at-arms, the direwolf's head snapping on her pennant, Jon Snow riding directly behind like a pale shadow. Dawn glittered on his mail, on the white wolf ghost padding silent at his flank, on the cold tully blue of the cloak she had loaned him against the wind. Conversation between them ran thin as spider silk those first days. Old hurts chafed like hidden splinters. Yet each night, when campfires fended off the cold and the riders pulled cloaks tight, it was Jon who moved through the ring, seeing that every man had bread and hot wine. Cailin watched, unwillingly impressed. By the time they crossed the Green Fork, banter had sprung where silence once lay, and Jon's laughter joined the men's like iron striking iron. Bright, surprising, and apt to kindle sparks. For leagues from Riverrun they passed refugees pushing handcarts piled with rush mats and copper pots. Smoke smudged the sky to the west, thin but ugly. The eldest crofter spat into the snow, muttering of red lions on the march, swords flashing in winter sunlight. Cailin spurred on, dread nipping at her heels. Riverrun's towers rose mauve in the dusk, banners drooping in the windless chill. The drawbridge lowered at her shout, but what met her eyes within the gateyard shook her. Cots crammed beneath awnings, wounded groaning while septons changed blood-soaked dressings. Edmure stalking the walls with unbound hair and grief-crimsoned eyes. Brynden Blackfish at his side, armor dinted, cloak rent. Tywin bites harder than rumor. The Blackfish greeted, voice like river gravel. Twin columns. One smashed Seaguard's levies at the Red Fork crossing. The other burned half a dozen hamlets before we forced them back. "Where is Hoster?" Cailin asked. Edmure rubbed a reddened sleeve across his mouth. "Fevered. The maester bleeds him nightly." Jon dismounted silently, ghost hovering behind. Cailin saw Edmure's quick frown. Bastard. But before a word could fall, Jon offered a pouch of good Winterfell herbs. "Maester Luwin swears by willow bark and meadowsweet for feverache," he said. "Take them with the Queen's men out of your yard." The Blackfish's assessing gaze flicked Caitlin's way. She nodded. "He speaks with my voice." And in that moment some fragment of old bitterness cracked, letting the river air rush between. Within hours she and Brynden set to work, reinforcing the southern dike, stretching netting of iron spikes across likely fordings, drafting letters to every riverlord still unburnt, to every sworn bow along the Trident. Jon took command of the outer watchfires. Ghost's eerie silence proved unnerving enough to keep even seasoned Lannister outriders from creeping close. Night after night orange light danced on the moat's smooth mirror, while beyond, the land lay black and full of waiting. Back in the north, the black waiting was on the march as well. Ned's first message to King's Landing had drawn no reply. His second came back torn and damp, writ by Grand Maester Pycelle in a hand that slanted like a man hurrying downstairs. His grace commands that the wall remain watchful, yet cannot spare grain. The realm must feed king and council first in these lean times. Rest assured, Lord Stark, we pray for your vigilance. Prayers, Ned thought darkly, would not fill bellies nor stack torches on ramparts. He summoned the Lord's bannermen who could reach Winterfell through the drifts. Manderly of White Harbor, Karstark of Carhold, Glover of Deepwood, Lady Meage Mormont swaddled in bearskin. They packed the hall, steam rising from cloaks like breath of stallions. He spoke of what he had seen in the haunted forests. Blue fire in dead eyes, bodies that cracked like glass, and intelligence guiding the white south. He spoke of Benjen's warning, of Jory's grave, of tracks that never thawed. Some shifted uneasily, others scoffed, but Ned's voice rang like ice itself, unyielding, cold enough to burn. When he finished, Meage Mormont slammed her mead down. "Boys' tales or not, the wall is ours to hold. 13 Mormonts march at dawn. The rest of you decide. Do your grandfathers speak through your blood or through the coin in your purse? That shamed murmur into steel." Karstark pledged 200 archers. Manderly, grain enough for 3 moons. Glover, 50 good woodsmen trained for ranging. Ned thanked them with bowed head. Yet deep inside he still felt the hollowness of being 3 lords short, stores half the size he'd hoped, and rookeries too often empty. On the naming day of the first new moon, they began the burning. From White Harbor to last hearth pyres were lit, one every 20 leagues, blazing monuments to drive terror back into the dusk. Black columns of smoke marched over the snows like mute sentinels. Wildlings fleeing the others saw those pillars and angled southeast toward the coast, away from the fire's promise and the night's watch blades that hovered behind. In this way thousands lived, at the cost of hundreds who died at spear point when panic broke discipline near the gorge. Ned pressed a bloody palm to the map, whispering they had done what mercy allowed. Still, the ghosts of the slain visited his dreams, blue stars smoldering where eyes belonged. The chill reached even the velvet-draped halls of the Red Keep. King Robert summoned a council, roaring that every raven out of that thrice-damned north flaps about ice demons and shortages. Cersei lounged in ermine, feigning boredom while her green eyes slid from Littlefinger's corked brow to Varys's bland smile. "Perhaps," she purred, "Lord Stark has let winter bugs crawl into his brain. Stannis Baratheon's scowl could have cracked granite. Your Grace, the wall begs men, not alms. If even half these tales are true, ignoring them court's doom. Pycelle stroked his beard. Old Nan's stories, my lord. The last long night is older than our grandsires. Stories kill same as swords, Stannis snapped. But Robert's thunder was spent. We have a river war, a treasury full of cobwebs, and a babe with dragon's blood brewing beyond the sea. We cannot bleed garrisons north and south both. He drained a flagon. Let Ned guard his snows. I will guard my throne. And so no swords rode from the capital, save one. Ser Barristan Selmy sought audience that same night and begged leave to bear a dozen of the king's guard to Winterfell. The realm is one body, he said. If frostbite takes the feet, the heart will follow. Robert, shamed, allowed half a dozen. Cersei protested the expense of white cloaks riding unseen wars, but Robert growled and she fell silent. 6 knights in enameled plate departed at dawn, their white cloaks snapping like pale wings against the red sunrise. Varys watched them go, perhaps the longest, whispering to a spider on his wrist. A fortnight later, Cailin stood on Riverrun's eastern battlement watching dust clouds swirl on the horizon. Trumpets brayed, Tywin's outriders again, sparring at the ford. She sensed a rhythm to the orange plumes. Test the dike, withdraw. Test the net, withdraw. They were measuring, weighing, searching for weaknesses. Sunset gilded her helm, and she felt the eyes of Jon Snow studying her from the walkway. "Speak it," she said at last. "I think they probe for more than stone," he answered. "They want our sleep." She nodded. A siege won by fear costs less steel. That night she convened the war council in Lord Hoster's Solar, her father too faint to attend. Plans were sketched. Send riders by moonlight north to the Twins, beg Walder Frey for levy. Dispatch riverboats up the Tumblestone to rally Blackwood and Bracken both. Unleash sorties at dawn to harry wagons. "We cannot break his host," Brynden admitted, finger-tapping the map. "But we can break his belly." Jon leaned over the candle's guttering flame. "And if the Lannisters press before hunger bites?" Edmure frowned. "The moat is 10 fathoms deep. Moat water freezes in winter," Jon said, eyes shadow-ringed. The Blackfish's smile showed teeth. "Then we must keep it moving." So they set men hacking channels through the ice by torchlight, black water churning like stirred ink. Each hour the banks refroze. Each hour men with frost-bleeding hands broke it again. Discipline became religion. Fear its whip. 3 days later, Tywin's vanguard charged the ford at dawn. Trumpets split the frosted air. Hooves hammered. Sunlight flashed on red-gold lions. The icy plankway groaned under mailed shock, then gave. Whole ranks plunged into the moat's dark mouth. Archers loosed. The tumblestone boiled red. On the northern bank, a goat path overlooked by hidden scorpions became a charnel chute. When Tywin's bannermen dragged what remained of their first assault back across the snow, they left near 300 corpses caught in the half-frozen mud, staring stiffly at a sky that answered with silent snowflakes. Riverrun's garrison cheered. Cailin did not. Her brother's grim nod matched her own. This battle's cost they could bear, today. Tomorrow the lions would try a new ploy. Victories did not stack. They melted like the snows they fought beneath. Among the bodies recovered was a boy no older than Bran, face blue where water had kissed him. Cailin stooped and closed his staring eyes. "He had a mother?" she murmured, snow hissing on chainmail. Jon heard and said nothing, only helped lift the corpse onto the pyre. Flames ate the silence. Above, ravens circled like inkblots on white parchment. At Winterfell, those same ravens brought worse. The castle at Queen's Crown overrun, every soul within taken or slain save a lone girl, who ran 3 leagues barefoot to Long Lake. She spoke of white shadows without breath, of corpses with blades of ice grown from their hands. Ned's knuckles whitened round the rampart stone as he listened. Evening bled away unnoticed. At last he descended the tower and sent riders galloping to Last Hearth, Greywater Watch, even to Bear Island across cracked sea ice. "Tell every lord the dead walk," he ordered. "Tell them Winterfell summons them to war." Robb met him on the stairs. "Word has come from the Vale. the boy said, voice soft as fresh-fallen snow. Lisa Arryn closes her gates. She will send no men, lest the Lannisters slip round her flank. Ned closed his eyes. Then we stand shorter by 10,000. We stand, Robb insisted, but fear hid behind the firmness. That night Ned knelt by the heart tree again. The face in the white bark seemed changed. Its mouth widened, eyes deeper, tears of red sap thicker. He laid ice across his knees. I rode south once for a friend and lost a sister, he whispered. I stayed north now for duty and may lose half a realm. Tell me, old gods, was there ever a right road? Only the rustle of crimson leaves replied, like cards shuffled by a butcher. But a wind stirred them into one word, or so he thought, carried faint on the air. Stand. So he stood, and from Wintertown to Widow's Watch the horns began to sound, 3 long blasts each dusk, the ancient call of the night's watch for others abroad. Folk who had never in their lives seen the wall heard that dread note shiver across the wind and felt their hearth fires gutter a little lower. Mothers tightened blankets, fathers sharpened homemade spears. The north was waking, and in its waking lay a fear older than pride. 6 white cloaks arrived on moonbright snow, bearing banners of the crowned stag. They saluted Ned amid a hush of ravens. Even the wolves in the kennels stilled, as though sensing history's footfall.
Ser barrista Ned.
Winterfell's need is the realm's need, he said. We stand to serve. Ned offered clasped forearms. Your oath honors us. Serve first by eating, resting, and telling me how matters stand with Robert. Around the hearth Barristan spoke in low tones. Of coin grown scarcer than honor in the capital, of Pycelle dosing the king more than healer's wisdom warranted, of Cersei's whispered counsels behind locked doors. His grace grows tired, Barristan admitted. Not of rule alone, of life's weight. Ned's stomach clenched. Robert drunk was worrisome. Robert reckless when weary could tear kingdoms. The north could ill afford a southern storm while glaciers advanced from the wall. Barristan also bore another letter, sealed with Stannis's mailed fist. Lord Stark, if winter devours us, our family's blood will be first to freeze. I ride to Dragonstone to gather mine own fleet and levy. When the time comes, send Raven. The true Baratheon answer will follow the true north. Ned folded the parchment, mind racing. Stannis was rigid, unbending, yet also the only man Robert feared to ignore entirely. A fleet in Stannis's hands might bring grain from the south coast, might ferry men to Eastwatch, might strike Lannister ports if need. Or it might spark civil war should the lions draw Robert into folly. He drafted reply by midnight oil, terse, binding Stannis to caution, urging haste and secrecy both. Then he rose to the ramparts once more, watching the aurora flicker above the mountains. The green tongues looked like dragonfire, and for a heartbeat he fancied he saw wings unfurl over the shivering sea. Perhaps across the world a dragon hatched. Perhaps only the gods played games of light across their boards of snow. Either way, men would bleed while gods watched. Bleeding came sooner at Riverrun. Tywin tried the eastern bank under a moonless dark. Rams cloaked in black felt to muffle each thud. Jon Snow, restless at a watchfire, heard the faint, unnatural hush of river reeds parting. He loosed Ghost into shadow. The direwolf's sudden snarling run tore into raiders just as the first ram kissed oak. Torches whooshed alight, arrows hissed down, and before the lions could form ranks the blackfish barged out the postern in a wedge of pikemen. Hours later charred siege timber bobbed in the tumblestone, and Tywin's engineers lay dismembered on the snow like broken toys. But victory cost dearly. 3 of Cailin's river knights slain, a dozen men frozen where they fought waist-deep in ice water, and Jon stabbed through the upper arm defending a drawbridge crank. The maester stitched him by a candle that guttered in the draft. Jon neither flinched nor spoke, teeth bared white. Cailin held the lamp while the needles worked. When it was over, she found herself brushing sweat tendrils from his brow. He looked up, surprised. A silence passed, thickened, broke. "You fought like a Stark," she murmured. "I fought like a man afraid to fail," he answered. She opened her mouth, closed it. That too. Outside, horns brayed retreat. Inside Riverrun, another horn sounded, a low toll from Hoster Tully's chamber. The Lord of the Rivers and Hills breathed his last before dawn, his fevered mutterings fading to a sigh. Edmure wept. Brynden stood rigid. Cailin smoothed her father's gray-white hair and thought, the river claims all things in time. She donned mourning black and crimson, but grief waited. Battles barged ahead of tears. A lord dying did not make a siege cease. Indeed, Tywin's catapults began hurling heads come sunrise. Blackened skulls from the failed night raid, plus others rumored prisoners from the burned hamlets. They thudded in courtyards, bounced down stairs. One struck a septon's bell and cracked it from lip to shoulder. Jon gathered what remains he could, burned them beside the moat, vowing never again to fail the living by disrespecting the dead. In Winterfell, snow lay so deep the rampart tops looked like the spines of slumbering leviathans. Maester Luwin's ravens returned bearing news of small skirmishes near Queen's Crown, of umber spears clashing with corpses and winning at cost, of wildlings entreating at Eastwatch for ferries across the Bay of Seals. One black bird bore something stranger still, a scrap of pale white leather, supple despite frost, folded round a shard of glassy stone blue as glacier heart. No words, only a sigil burnt into the hide. Whorls within whorls, each coil a tiny blade-etched rune. The ranger who'd found it claimed a child of the forest offered it in silence, then vanished mid-snowflake. Ned turned the shard under torchlight. It bled cold, so much colder than normal ice. He thrust its tip into a brazier. Coals hissed. Frost spread outward, sapping the flames until only ash remained.
Ser bajista murmure da prayer.
Dawn itself could not cut so deep, he said hoarsely. Ned ordered the shard locked in an iron chest beneath the forge, ringed by runes Mikken hammered using the old tongue gleaned from dusty records. But he felt no safer knowing it lay there. It felt as though some great eye had swung its gaze south and pinned Winterfell in its sight. Tywin's siege engines paused, but winter did not. One by one lesser streams feeding the Trident froze until the main river slowed to a thickened crawl. Cailin knew once the central current ceased, Riverrun's moat would become a highway. She sent ravens begging Roose Bolton for men, imploring Walder Frey for levies, even writing to Stannis at Dragonstone, though she doubted ships could reach this far upriver come spring, let alone now. It was Jon who proposed a desperate ploy. Flood the far fields, Lady Cailin. Break the dikes above the tumblestone. Brynden scoffed. Drown our own grain? Drown the enemy with it, Jon countered. A lake may freeze, but a lake for cubits deep cracks under armored marchers. Cailin considered the map, saw the lowland bowl upstream, the gentle slope where Tywin staged wagons. To break the dikes meant surrendering next summer's plantings, perhaps starving villages come harvest. But to lose Riverrun meant losing the Riverlands entire. Sacrifice had a weight, and Ned's face floated before her mind's eye, murmuring of balances. So she chose. That night pikemen hammered wedges out of the ice at 3 dam points. They dragged burning pitch barrels and toppled them into the gaps, melting fissures wider until roaring torrents gushed. Water spilled black beneath starlight, swallowing fields, wagons, tents. Lannister outriders woke to freezing deluge up to their shins. Some drowned tangled in guy ropes, others fled screaming as campfires hissed out. By dawn, a shining inland sea stretched between Tywin's siege lines and Riverrun's walls, mirrored clouds rippling under arrows of wind. The lions could no longer approach in mass. Boats must be built, and that would cost time and timber they had burned too freely in earlier raids. Tywin rode the shoreline at noon, golden helm catching sunlight. He sat his destrier still as a statue, staring across the glittering plain. Then he turned south without a word. Cheers leapt from every tower. When they faded, Cailin found Jon at the inner curtain, blood from his stitched arm leaking anew where he'd hauled barrels. She pressed linen against it until the flow ceased. "You have river eyes," she told him. He blinked. "They see currents." Ghost licked the blood-flecked snow. Somewhere above, a raven cawed, then another, and another, a cacophony spinning like black confetti across the white sky. One raven from that flock veered northeast, winging past the twins, over the bite of white knife, arriving spent at Winterfell 3 dawns hence. Its message was from Cailin, brief but potent. Tywin stalled. Riverrun holds. Father is dead. Pray for spring. Ned read it thrice. Silence closed round him like fresh fallen snow. Hoster Tully had once been vibrancy itself, booming laughter echoing across summer riverbanks. Ned remembered the old lord hoisting Arya in his arms, calling her the fiercest fish in the Trident. Now death had caught another of Ned's generation, a reminder that even victories left hollows behind. He took the letter to the Godswood and burned it at the heart tree's feet, ash drifting into the red leaves. "Keep them," he asked the old god's voice raw. "Keep Cat. Keep the boy she guards. Keep all souls who stand the darkness." Red sap glistened like tears. A wind rose through the branches, gusting sparks skyward until they winked out among the stars. In King's Landing, Cersei received word of Tywin's check with a curl of lip. "Father plays the long game," she told Jaime over gemstone wine. Jaime flexed golden fingers. "So does the North, it seems. I hear Stark banners mass at Moat Cailin, and yet still your friend Robert drinks." "Friend?" Jaime laughed softly. "Tell the truth, sweet sister. Would you mourn if the boar got him this hunt?" Cersei's lashes lowered like daggers sliding into sheaths. "Not if," she murmured. "When?" Outside, the red keep shadows lengthened, and the Iron Throne stood silent, its barbs glinting in half-seen shapes. A wolf's tooth here, a dragon's forked tongue there, a blade once clean now dulled by the dust of 20 kings. Dusk at Winterfell, torches guttering, frost creeping glass-like along the walls. Maester Luwin hurried to Ned bearing a sealed cylinder of Valyrian glass. Within lay a single scrap of sheepskin inked with 3 tiny sigils. A laughing tree, a speared lion, and a crowned stag. The seals were broken. "Intercepted," Luwin whispered. "Found on a Bolton scout slain at the last river. Content blank. Save for this." He drew a lock of midnight hair tied round a fragment of golden ribbon. Ned's blood chilled deeper than ice. He knew the locks of his sister, knew Rhaegar's crown of midnight hair, but this was another's. "What game do they play?" he muttered. He felt the past climbing from its grave, corpse fingers reaching. If bastards and blue roses had haunted his dreams, now a fresh perfume, tainted by the stink of lion, drifted through the halls of his waking world. Who sent whose hair? And to whom? He summoned Ser Barristan and Robb. They studied the relic like paleontologists glimpsing a tooth from some beast long extinct but still deadly. "Bolton claims neutrality," Barristan said, "yet his men range near the last river." Robb's jaw set. "The Dreadfort's silence stinks like old blood." Ned ordered discreet riders to every Bolton hamlet, demanding fealty renewed. But in his bones he sensed deeper treachery. Secrets thrived in winter's womb. Soon they would be born howling. On the 20th day of the 9th moon, the sun failed to rise. At twilight, faint red light flickered beneath the horizon, but clouds swallowed it. Snow fell thick as feathers, blanketing hoofprints, clogging arrow slits. Ned's sentries reported groaning in the dark beyond the Godswood. No wolves, for they would not howl over their own dead. When dawn finally crawled up, pale and lethargic, 30 villagers huddled at the gate, half mad, telling of a holdfast west of Widow's Watch where every warm body woke cold and blue under the same moonless sky. No sign of steel cut them. They simply rose and walked into the dark. Ned fed the survivors broth and dispatched Micken's fastest smithy lads north with blazons full of pitch oil. "If the dead come," he said, "make the sky burn." He stood watch until the torches dwindled to specks, then joined Maester Luwin in the library tower, poring over maps of grain stores south of the Neck. They spoke of desperate measures, sending wagons by sea to White Harbor, melting lard for lamp fuel, using root cellars as nurseries for mushrooms. And still the letters came, each bearing fresh aches. Tywin's withdrawal to the Golden Tooth. Was it retreat or ruse? Renly courting Highgarden for alliance and coin. Pycelle's dismissal of Ned's warnings as northern ague. No word from Cat in 6 days, the last raven likely lost in blizzard. Even Stannis had gone silent, his fleet perhaps stalled by storms in the narrow sea. Ned climbed the rookery that night, ravens scattering. He chose a white bird, rare, but Luwin kept 2, and penned 5 words meant for no crown, no counsel, but for a friend. When winter comes, remember honor. He addressed it to Ser Davos Seaworth of Dragonstone, a man who understood storms. Then he set it free, watching until the dark swallowed white wings. He prayed Davos would read between every syllable. Winterfell might soon fall, the realm might drown in lions or ice, but if honor lived in a smuggler's breast, perhaps one candle would remain lit against the night. Midwinter's longest night arrived swathed in green aurora shimmering like banners of some unseen host. Ned broke bread with Barristan atop the wall, Winterfell's northernmost wall, not the Great Wall, though the cold felt akin. Below, torches flickered on the red stone steps. Beyond, the world lay still. They spoke little. One did not waste words before an enemy that listened in the dark. At length Barristan cleared his throat. "If King's Landing truly ignores your pleas," he said, "are we not oath-bound to ride to Robert's side when he calls?" Ned kept his eyes on the lights. "When he calls," he echoed. "But if his call never comes?" Barristan straightened. "A king's silence does not free knight's vows. Even when the king errs. Perhaps." Ned's breath smoked like incense. "Yet there is another vow older than white cloaks or crowns. The vow men make to their children's children. To keep the world alive for them to see." He turned. "If Robert commands us south while the dead press, I may break his order." A long pause. Snow dusted Barristan's pauldrons, softening the white enamel. "Then I will break it with you," the old knight said quietly. "For children's children."
Ned nodded, throat tight.
Children in Riverrun wore iron at their belts now. Wooden iron, carved toy swords, but they practiced daily in the yard under Jon's supervision. Arya would have loved these drills, Cailin mused, but Arya was crowded 300 leagues behind winter walls. She watched Jon show a stork-legged stable boy how to keep his edge aligned. The boy laughed when he finally parried correctly. Jon ruffled his hair, oblivious to the blood seeping through his bandage again. Cailin beckoned him after practice. "You cannot keep reopening it," she scolded, hands deft as any healer's. He winced as she resewed one stubborn stitch. "Idle hands make coward hearts, or living hearts, if they survive the idle." She bit off the thread. "Your father would skin me if I delivered you home one-armed." The flicker in Jon's eyes at the word father was a storm cloud's quick shadow. "He is not my father," he said softly, "but he is the man I wish to be." "Then let him see you whole," she replied, and because some quiet thaw had set between them, she added, "You wield your duty well, Jon Snow." He blinked, color rising in his cheeks warmer even than firelight. "It is all I have." "No," she rested a hand on his uninjured shoulder. "You have a place in this house if you choose it." The unspoken bastard or not drifted like wood smoke between them. He lowered his head, a shy nod. Ghost, sensing release of tension, padded forward to butt its huge white head against her thigh. She stiffened, then allowed the touch. The direwolf's eyes, red as garnet, seemed almost gentle. The place between storms could not last. On the first new moon of the 10th month, watchers atop Winterfell's east tower spotted fire on the northern horizon. Green and unnatural, lining the forest edge like baleful torches. The blast of horns followed, 2 for wildlings, 3 for others. Ned scrambled into male, heart-punching ribs. By the time he gained the gatehouse, shapes emerged from the darkness. Ragged wildlings half-dragging children, faces streaked with tears that froze mid-cheek. "They come!" one woman screamed. "Blue gods in the pines. They kill the fire." Robb mustered spears along the curtain while Ned questioned the refugees. Their stories differed in detail but agreed in horror. A host of dead sweeping south 5,000 strong, driving living before them, devouring stragglers. Ned felt the night air thicken, as though the dark itself drew breath. He turned to Ser Barristan. We ride at first light to the barrows. The wall cannot hold if these break past. And if first light never comes? The old knight asked, jaw set. Then we ride in black, Ned answered. He ordered Maester Luwin to send ravens to every lord, ordered Mikken to forge spearheads of dragonglass smashed from the shard's edges, ordered the blacksmith's wife to fill cauldrons with tar and quicklime. Squires ran like ants. Drummers beat the heart of Winterfell into a steady war cadence. When he paused at the base of the keep, he found himself facing the heart tree rising above the wall. For an instant he thought the carved eyes blazed a brighter red, as though the old gods themselves had snapped awake. Then the wind veered and the crimson gleam faded. Ned took that flicker nonetheless for an omen, not mercy but witness. The gods would watch what came. Watching was all they ever did. Far south, in a quiet solar heavy with myrrh, Queen Cersei knelt beside King Robert's bed. His cheeks sagged, skin waxen. A boar's tusk wound festered purplish at his flank. Pycelle sniffed portentously over a tincture. Milk of the poppy, your grace. You will rest easy. Robert's eyes, half-lidded, sought Cersei's. She pressed cool fingers to his lips. Sleep, she whispered. Dream of summers past. He swallowed once, a child's gesture. When his lids fluttered shut, Cersei rose, gown whispering like silk over sharp blades. She gazed down at the man who had forged a kingdom and then let it rust. Dream, Shiar, repeated, voice thin as ice, and never wake. At the foot of the bed a chained raven croaked. Its feathers shimmered with faint green where candle flames licked them. No maester remembered placing it there. It watched queen and king in silence, black eye reflecting orange light. Then, as Cersei turned to leave, the bird uttered 3 harsh syllables that sounded like stand, 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 and the candle nearest guttered out. Yet no one heard save the raven itself, and ravens, after all, cannot speak. North again, Cailin dreamed of snow that burned like oil. She woke to Jon shaking her shoulder. Ravens, he murmured. Dawn had barely stretched pale fingers through the arrow slits, but couriers waited with scrolls sealed in dark wax. Ned's summons to gather at Moat Cailin under direwolf banner. The dead march, the letter read. Bring every or bow and hope. Edmure cursed softly. Brynden tightened his sword belt. Tywin still lurked across the flood lake, but each day his scouts probed farther, testing the deepening ice. To march north now risked leaving Riverrun to lions, yet to tarry risked watching ice demons sweep into the realm behind them. The Blackfish let the scroll crumble in his fist. We ride. The lion can gnaw our walls but cannot devour the realm alone. If the dead break through, Tywin's banners will freeze and shatter like any other. Edmure hesitated, lord newly made, heavy with grief, but at last nodded. A token garrison stays, the rest rides. Caitlin stepped to the battlement and looked upon the lake her people had sacrificed. Sheets of ice glimmering pink under dawn, thin in places, thick in others, treacherous as Lannister promises. She thought of Robb's face, of Sansa's prayers, of Arya's fierce grin, of Bran's stories of giants. All of them waited north under shrinking skies. She turned to Jon. We ride, she repeated, and this time the words felt iron. And gods have mercy on those who stay. In the haunted midday twilight over Winterfell, Ned tightened the last strap on his saddle. Robb stood armored at his side, helm tucked beneath one arm. You will hold the gates, Ned told him, and if the walls fall, they won't. If they do, retreat to the Godswood. Fire the moat with pitch. The heart tree's roots run deep. Use them as last redoubt. Robb swallowed. Father, Ned drew him into a quick embrace. A lord must see beyond fear. I have seen, and I still believe. Believe in what? Robb whispered. In men who stand, Ned said, no matter when the dawn comes.
Ser barristan mounted.
The 6 white cloaks formed a silent honor guard around Ned. Behind them, banners snapped. The Bear of Mormont, the flayed man of Dreadfort Roose, had come at last with 200 silent levies. The Sunburst of Karstark, the Merman of Manderley, the mailed fist of Glover. Horses stamped, bits jingled. Too few, Ned thought, far too few. But all we have. He raised his sword ice. Its pale fire caught the weak sun, sending a cold gleam over the gathered host. "Ride!" he commanded. Hoofs thundered. Snow churned up like thrown pearls. Behind, Winterfell's gates groaned shut, leaving Robb upon the battlements, Theon at his right, Maester Luwin clutching ravens, and Arya somewhere atop the library tower secretly watching, tears freezing to her cheeks. Southward, Cailin's host spurred from Riverrun, banners streaming against gray sky. A leaping trout, a snarling direwolf, a direwolf quartered with river stripes stitched new by Sansa's own patient hands. Between these two hosts the land of Westeros stretched, and between the living and the dead an invisible line tightened until it thrummed like a bowstring drawn to breaking. Somewhere east across Windark Sea a dragon's egg cracked, and the cry that followed sent seabirds spiraling. Somewhere south a king gasped his last breath, poppy sweet. And in the north a raven skimmed the clouds, white wings beating a solitary cadence, carrying one scrap of hope toward a castle wreathed in smoke and ancient salt, where a smuggler waited out a storm and dreamed of men who still kept their word. The bowstring trembled. Then, somewhere just beyond the edge of hearing, winter hissed, and the first true arrow of the long night was loosed. The storm broke over the bar rollins in a rush of white that scoured banners blank and drowned every sound beneath its roar. Eddard Stark rode half-blind, his cloak of frozen plank hanging from his shoulders, ice strapped across his back where the wind could not steal its edge. Around him the northern host advanced as more a thought than an army, each man no more than a hunched blur moving through whirling grit. Hoofs thudded, muffled as though wrapped in wool. What little could be seen of the sky glimmered a sickly emerald, the green rippling and shifting like scales beneath black ice. No one spoke. Speech became a sin against the cold. It stripped heat from the tongue. Even the white knights of the Kingsguard, 6 bright flares within the canvas of swirling snow, kept silence, their cloaks plastered against gilded pauldrons, all shine buried beneath frost. They crested a low ridge before twilight and found what scouts had promised but could not name. The plain below stripped down to bone. No scrub, no stones, no drifts, only a broad circle of ground scoured flat, a black char in the snow, and at its center the ruin of a village that had once clung to a barrow mound. Hedgerows and squat turf roofs Ned remembered from boyhood journeys with old Nan were gone. In their place the barrow's mouth gaped, a jagged wound rhymed in blue. Something glimmered within that maw, cold fire the color of drowned men's eyes. Ned signaled a halt. Ranks closed behind him in uneasy hush. Barristan Selmy drew alongside, visor crusted in diamond frost. "We found no tracks ahead," the old knight rasped. Breath steamed through the grill of his helm, condensing on the white enamel rose. "No tracks to find. The wind scrubs their passage as they go. Or they walk without touching ground," Ned murmured. He raised a gauntlet hand toward the yawning barrow. The wind swirled, and from that hollow came a note, low and thrumming. Neither whistle nor moan, but something of both, as though buried voices disputed in a tongue men were never meant to hear. Horses pawed and snorted. Some men swore they felt the sound in their teeth. Roose Bolton urged his destrier forward till he sat level with Ned. Only his eyes showed between furred hood and half-mask. They were pale, expressionless. "If the dead hide there, smoke them out," he said. "Pitch and torch. Barrow fires run hot." "They run long as well," Barristan cautioned. "Flames can wake things best left sleeping in these graves." "Things are already awake," Bolton replied, voice soft as snowfall. Ned weighed them both, gaze scouring the ring of darkened snow. At last he shook his head. "We cannot tarry. The host must march on. The barrow will keep its secrets." But as he turned to signal advance, the low note within the mound ceased. Silence rippled outward, sudden and gaping. Then a fissure snaked up the barrow's flank, splitting turf and icy loam alike. Something emerged, no shape the human eye could grasp, only suggestion. A shard of night stood upright, taller than 2 men, thin as a shark's tooth, icy surface writhing with ghost color. It lifted a limb, no, a fractal spear grown from its arm, and planted it against the ground. The snow beneath the point flashed bright, then guttered into gray ash. A second figure followed, and a third. The barrow disgorged them like a rotted hive vomiting hornets that had forgotten the warmth of life. Where they stepped, the snow collapsed into dust. Where they turned, the air groaned with a pressure that made men's lungs throb. A single word hissed from hundreds of throats at once. Living, dead, and dying all around the ridge. Others, someone whispered, and all the host knew it true. Bolton's pale eyes flickered, but his hand rose smooth as oil. "Loose," he said, unruffled. Arrows spat from Karstark longbows, feather shafts arcing down the slope. Half burned to embers before landing, snuffed by cold no fire could endure. The rest struck home, only to shatter against flesh hard as diamond. A shower of blue ice dust spiraled from each impact, where on any mortal it would have been blood. "Dragon glass,"
Ned roared.
a second volley answered, obsidian heads glittering in failing light. These found cracks. The first of the others split down the center like a frozen riverbed, shards spinning outward. No blood, no marrow, nothing. The pieces tinkled across the barrow floor, each humming with that same awful keen until at last the wind swallowed them whole. But for each that fell, 3 more rose. At Ned's back, horns blared, 3 deep blasts that rattled breastbone and memory alike. Long Night's call carried further than any living sound. Wolves beyond the host howled answer, a distant broken choir. The battle that followed men would struggle to name. Stories after would speak of swords ringing off air, of spears carving nothingness only to rebound with edge dulled. They would speak of white cold so pure it burned, of living men trapped screaming in statues of frost. Yet there in the thick of it Ned felt no awe, only the brute math of distance and steel. He swung ice two-handed, severing limbs that shattered like glass, but he could not feel victory. Each shard that fell seemed to birth a wraith of vapor twisting toward his heart. Barristan's white cloak burned away in moments, edges eaten by rime until the silk drifted down as flakes. Still the old knight fought, blade glowing orange where fire oil dripped from its engraved fuller, sparks coughing with every parry. All else blurred, save the sudden scream of a horn again, for long notes, the signal for a flank collapsing. Glover's left wing. Ned wheeled his destrier and spurred through the melee, Barristan and 3 Kingsguard at his heels. When he reached the far line, he saw chaos. Men running, shields rimed, swords useless. At their center, something older than the others moved, towering a full foot above its kin, face masked in a crown of radiating ice spines. The crown's points bent, not upward, but downward like claws gripping its head. In its hand it wielded a spear fashioned from human spine, each vertebra fused with azure glass, the blade a single sliver too bright to look upon. It drove that spear into ground and the earth cracked wide, fissures racing out so fast Ned's mount staggered, legs skittering on splintering soil. Where fissures met flesh, limb or hoof, frost boiled up in geysers that encased all it touched. A warhorse fell screaming, legs frozen to the hip. The rider tumbled and was lost beneath thrashing hooves. Bolton's men, disciplined by cruelty, clenched ranks despite the terror, but their spears clanged off the crowned figure's exoskeleton harmlessly. Ned dismounted, ice clutched in both fists. He felt each heartbeat as a hammer blow on an anvil made of breath. The figure turned to him, spear rising, and Ned glimpsed his own reflection in its mirror-dark visor. An old wolf with snow in his beard, eyes ringed by years, madness glittering bright. So this is how the North remembers, he thought, and charged. He did not remember crossing the space, only the ringing impact as obsidian met spear. Sparks black and cerulean erupted. The spear point quivered, cracked a hair's width. The crowned creature recoiled fractionally, and Barristan's Selmy slid in like the silent tail of a comet, white cloak remnant streaming off one shoulder. His long sword hammered the crack Ned's swing had opened. A note like a bell's funeral peal rolled across the ridge, freezing air itself in rings. The spear burst into a snowfall of shattered bone and azure shards. The crowned other hissed, retreating a step. For a heartbeat Ned could see eternity within its visor. icy ruins stretching to dark horizons, endless columns of frozen men kneeling in ranks beneath alien constellations. Then the creature lifted both clawed hands, frosted talons unfurling. A white wave buckled outward. Barristan slammed to one knee. Ned felt veins in his face burst, blood flecking his inner lids. But ice was forged for ancient wars. Ned roared, sound swallowed inside the blast, but roared nonetheless, stepped forward, and drove the great sword through the creature's chest. Obsidian-edged steel kissed alien ice, fused then sundered, splitting the torso into a lattice of fractal lightning. The crowned other collapsed inward, not shattering as its kin did but imploding, drawing in air and light, forging a brief night at midday. The vacuum tugged at Ned's cloak, at his breath, then erupted outward in silence. Where the creature had stood lingered only a fine silver mist, dispersing as quickly as dew. The remaining others paused. That they could hesitate at all chilled Ned more than their touch. A collective screech tore from them, raw, grieving, not anger but something like fear made manifest, and in a single rush they retreated. No man could say how they moved, swift as blink, swifter, but within 30 heartbeats they were gone. The storm still howled, the barrow still glowed, but the plain belonged to men again, and to death. 60 northerners lay still or shattered. 20 horses, 3 Kingsguard dead, cut in two, their armor splayed like split fruit. Bolton's left wing decimated, yet they had held. As men set torches to corpses lest they rise again, Barristan sat on a stone, helm in hands. His white hair clung in wet strings. Ned knelt beside him. "You stabbed a god today," the old knight said quietly. Ned shook his head. "A demon, perhaps. No gods in that ice." "They served something," Barristan murmured. "War is worship for some." Ned had no answer, so he rose, and in rising felt years settle heavier than any armor. Night found them huddled in a shallow vale, windbreaks of shield wall and loyal corpses piled to block gusts. Ned called the captains into council around a low oil fire that hissed and spat. "We march south again come first light," he said. "We send Raven of our victory." Roose Bolton's mouth twisted minimal degrees. "We won a skirmish and bled half our strength. South marches will break before spring reaches us. Then we will break with them," Ned answered. "We are no longer defending. We attack. Fire and glass, sword and dog. We will harry the dead till they shatter or we do." Glover slammed fist to breast in answer. Karstark followed. Meege Mormont, gory hatchet resting across her knees, only nodded, teeth bared in a grin. Bolton's eyes flickered lamplight. "Harriers need supply. White Harbor's grain ships sail as we speak," Ned said. "And Stannis Baratheon readies a fleet. We are not alone." "Not yet," whispered Doubt. They were less alone than they knew. East of the narrowing Bay of Seals, the sea churned beneath clouds so thick they threatened to birth mountains. On that black water rode a fleet of 40 galleys trimmed Baratheon yellow and black. At their prow stood Stannis himself, jaw clenched, lips thin. Beside him Davos Seaworth clutched Ned's short raven note, reading and rereading as though ink might shift under his scrutiny. When the first bergs floated into view, blue cathedrals drifting south on dark tide, Stannis turned. "Dragonstone's fires warm no man in winter," he said. "But oath warms him enough if kept." Davos nodded. "Aye, and an oath kept still leaves room for another." "What oath is that?" "The one we will make tomorrow when we anchor at Eastwatch, that we turn no prow south until the dark is ended." Stannis's mouth twitched, perhaps an almost smile, but the cold stole its shape. The cold stole shapes everywhere. Moat Cailin rose from the neck like 3 misshapen fingers, green, moss-slick, older than lineages. Catelyn Stark's host reached the causeway on a morning when even frogs fell silent. Jon Snow rode at her side, face gaunt, arm freshly fevered from battle strain. Theon Greyjoy awaited them atop the one tower still mostly sound, gray iron scales of armor clinking. "You're prettier than any crow I expected," he called down, trying to grin. Worry thinned the jest. "Where's Robb?" "Holding Winterfell," Jon answered. He dismounted first, helped Cailin step into shallow black water. Flags popped overhead. The trout and direwolf quartered with river stripes, answering the drowned kraken. The neck smelled of brine and old peat. Bog soldiers in patchwork camo drifted through reeds, eyes bright beneath mud masks. Greywater men sworn to Howland Reed. Their chief scout, Mira, met Cailin at the causeway with polite nod. "My father awaits in the tower. The causeway holds for now, but dark things wade through fog. Men vanish when they stray from torchlight." Inside, the tower stank of mildew. Howland Reed bent over a crude table, maps penned on birch bark, tiny carved stones marking hosts. Lion, wolf, trout, kraken. Caitlin's entrance stirred him to rise. Shorter than she remembered, hair streaked iron. He clasped her hands. "The South follows you," he said. "Lannisters at your back, dead at the front." Cailin wasted no time. "How long can we hold the neck?" He shrugged. "The earth itself fights for us. But earth grows weary when winter drinks its water. We will delay days, maybe weeks. Not moons. Then we must slip through." Jon studied the table. "We need barges. We have rafts enough." Reed tapped tiny boat tokens. "Course southwest, cut across still waters under moon. But lions prowl the banks, and something colder moves behind them. Spies wearing dead men's skins. Our darts pass through, our nets snag only ice." Cailin rubbed arms against chill. "We pass anyway, and if the pass costs half your men, then half reach Winterfell where they will matter more," she said. No tremor colored her voice. That night riders lit pitchballs along causeway edges while Reed's marshfolk eased rafts into still channels. Jon oversaw loading. Barrels of salt pork, bundles of arrows, sacks of obsidian slingstones carved from igneous shards Mira's kin mined beneath peat bogs. Ghost wove among them, sniffing barrels, occasionally pausing to glare into fog with a growl that raised neck hairs. Near midnight, a low drum began, no human drum. Water slapping reed stems in irregular cadence, echo traveling strange. Jon paused mid-binding a hawser. "What's that?" Mira jerked her chin. "I've heard it." A call from beneath. Jon's hand drifted to blade. Theon Greyjoy muttered a salt prayer under breath. The sound grew until water near the causeway vibrated. Shapes slid under the rafts. Dark, long, impossible to mark. Then a thing rose. A torso of rotted man, arms stark, dragging seaweed hair that wafted like eelgrass. Its eyes shone blue. It clawed onto a raft, screaming not with voice but with every seam of its corpse, joints cracking. Another followed. Reek of brine and death burst across night. Ghost leapt, jaws severing a wrist. Mira's spear of dragonglass pinned one through temple. The bodies burst into vapor. Yet more came. Arrows hissing, torches thrown. Flame danced on oil-slick water. Boats rocked as men hacked. Jon smashed pommel into skull above him, felt bone shatter. Ghost fought beside, white fur streaked in black slime. Theon's kraken shield battered a corpse back into water where it hissed and dissolved. But for every freeze-burned dead that fell, two bobbed up anew. They moved through water quicker than fish. Their blue eyes seemed lamps guiding the rest. Cailin strode among her men in full mail, sword from her father's crypt unsheathed. She found Jon, yelled above din, "We break now. Get the sails." They shoved rafts off lines. Wind caught patchwork sails, some linen, some hide, and pulled them into open channel. Dead clung still, but once the craft gained speed, they could not grip the slick weave. Arrows from marshfolk along banks picked off stragglers. By dawn, the flotilla drifted on wide estuary waters, cold but alive. Behind them, smoke rose from Moat Cailin's reed fires, black columns reaching sky. Jon bound his reopened wound while watching ghost silhouettes recede. "They know we gather," he told Cailin. She dabbed dried blood from his cheek. "Then they will find us ready." Eastwatch's towers cut lonely angles against churning sky. Stannis's fleet anchored in sleet, sails snapping hard. Men disembarked with caution, Some had never seen snow before. Others had never seen it so thick. Atop the gangplank Stannis met Lord Commander Jeor Mormont. "The wall has stood 5,000 years, Mormont said, frost on beard. "But time weighs heavier of late." "Swords weigh more," Stannis answered. "You shall have them." They exchanged quick nods, generals who respected economy. Davos disembarked last, carrying Ned's raven note tucked close. Eastwatch smelled of salt and death. Wildling refugees huddled on inner yard, eyes huge. Rime coated the portcullis like coral. Mormont led them to map room carved from ancient weirwood stump. Runes glimmered faint in candlelight. "The worst gather at night fort," he said. Our scouts glimpsed half-thawed giants bearing ice clubs. The wall at that section cracks. Stannis traced crack lines on vellum. "We repair. We have no stone. Then we brace with ironwood and prayers to gods old or new," Stannis growled. "We do not yield." Davos hid a smile behind glove. The Onion Knight had seen Stannis' stubbornness mar kingdoms yet save ships. Perhaps the realm needed just such iron. That night ravens arrived, bolt and seal Stark's hand. Ned's battle at the Barrow, the crowned other felled. Mormont read aloud. Silence followed. Finally Stannis said, "A crowned one. Kill a king, make a kingdom bleed." He paced once. "We ride dawn. 10 ships up coast with pitch casks. Rest along the wall to reinforce." Davos asked quiet, "And King's Landing?" Stannis paused. "If Robert dies, crown may pass while we fight. But a crown on a corpse is worthless." He touched his chest. "Breath first, then iron." Breath was near failing at Winterfell. The sky held a sickled moon, thin as rebuke. Robb Stark walked ramparts in wolfskin, cloak dyed stark gray. Theon beside him, Arya trailing though told not to. Snowflakes spiraled thick. Below, the outer gate creaked. Scouts returned from last river, faces gray. 3 villages burned, one reported. But no fire marks. Frost took them. "The river ice is black," another said. "Plague of crows circle there. They eat but grow sick." Robb's hands tightened on parapet. "Father marches to meet them, mother brings aid. We hold." He looked to Theon. "How many bolts?" 20 barrels in cellar. "Make 40. He turned to Arya. "Tell Mikken I want steel lances capped in dragonglass. And stay off walls." She made face but nodded. In the forges Mikken labored day and night. Sparks leapt, showering apprentices. Dragonglass arrowheads clicked into buckets, black and sharp. Each new design bore carved runes gleaned from cracked obsidian shard. Maester Luwin studied these runes between duties, fear and wonder wrestling in his eyes. "Symbols of old Valyria," he whispered. "But twisted. Twisted how?" Robb asked. Turned outward, as if warding something unseen. That unseen pressed closer. By week's end, the first wight stumbled against Winterfell's wall. An old pauper from Wintertown, missing 2 fingers, eyes burnt blue. Archers ended him with dragonglass, but the shock rippled. On the second night, 3 more came. 2 smallfolk women and a direwolf cub that had gone missing. On the third night, 10. Robb ordered torch lines around Moat, oil troughs primed. He slept in mail, sword sheathed by pillow. And still the dead came, each carrying memory of life into Winterfell's sight, each reminding living they might soon meet same fate. Not all dead wore blue eyes. In King's Landing, ravens croaked across a dawn that found King Robert Baratheon still at death's door, yet not beyond. Cersei Lannister hovered bedside, hand resting lightly on bandaged torso. Pycelle applied green salve that reeked of basilisk blood. Outside, bells tolled. Grand Maester's apprentices whispered rumors. Boar tusk wound unnatural. Some claimed sorcery. Varys glided through purple shadows, listening. At midday, Lord Renly Baratheon galloped in, his high gardener cloak imperious, and forced Cersei back from bedhead. "I will sit my brother's vigil," he declared. His knights, bright in Tyrell gold, formed shield wall outside chamber. Renly sat and watched Robert breathe, uneven, struggling. When Pycelle at last withdrew, Renly whispered to his brother. "If you wake, you'll find another storm at your gate. Best sleep through it." And yet there was real ache in his eyes. That evening Varys entered alone. He bowed deeply to Renly, then moved near Robert's ear. "The raven from Winterfell speaks of death on ice," he murmured. "Too large to ignore." Renly frowned. Varys pressed. "If the realm's wolves freeze, even lions will know hunger." Renly rolled his ring between fingers. "What does that matter if a Baratheon restores the harvest?" "A crown cannot grow grain," Varys said, "nor melt ice." He leaned closer. "Send men north, my lord. Your banner atop the wall earns songs kings crave." Renly considered. "And what of Cersei? Queens seldom leave capitals," Varys purred. "She will be safe." It was a lie, of course. Renly and the Spider both knew capitals devoured queens as readily as they crowned them. Still, the notion of Renly's own green stag flying beside Ned's direwolf kindled a fire in the young lord's imagination. Songs indeed. He left chamber to write orders. 500 Stormlander spearmen marching at dawn, 200 mounted knights. They would ride for the neck, show the north the south remembered old oaths. Beneath castle wall, Peter Baelish smiled to himself, counting potential coin. Coin bought little on the Barrowlands. Ned's battered host limped south, torches guttering in bitter wind. They followed Old Barrow Road into undulating hills where cairns dotted snows cape like the vertebrae of some titan. Each cairn cast long blue shadows under moon. Fires burned atop many, the Karstark's warning pyres. Some burned with orange, others with a strange green heft. Wizards' work, men muttered, uneasy. They camped by a half-frozen tarn, ice crust cracking softly. Ned ate smoked fish, though appetite had fled him days earlier. Barristan shared wine, thin and sour. They watched Bolton's dark tent where no lantern showed. "Strange, that one," Barristan said. "Stranger than most lords." "He holds his men's loyalty," Ned replied. "Fear and loyalty share a cloak." The old knight nodded, gazed distant, perhaps remembering Rhaegar's melancholy banner in a field of roses burned to ash. At midnight horns called again, single long, single short, a rider arriving. Ned pulled on cloak and paced to perimeter. There he found woman astride shaggy Garin, reed-woven cloak. Mira Reed. Behind her, smaller skiff of riders under river banners. "Your lady wife approaches," she said. Relief burst across Ned's tired features. "How far?" "2 days." She dismounted, offered scroll. Caitlin's hand, flotilla safe, Tywin stalled, dead in water. Ned folded parchment, hard a drum. "Rest," he told Mira. "At dawn ride with us." She shook head. "We must return, guide Lady Caitlin's approach." In her eyes flickered weight, knowledge of causeway dead, of neck sinking. She mounted again, vanished into dark. Ned returned to camp, but sleep eluded him. He walked lakeshore, ice-rimed edges green flash as Aurora danced. Among the lights he thought to see images. Lyanna smiling, Benjen's horse plunging into black. He knelt, pressing glove to frozen mud. "Winter," he said, "I have borne all you gave me. Give me my family and you may take the rest." Wind answered, harsh, but he chose to believe it promise. Next day a second rider came, not from Marsh but from Bolton Vanguard. "Dreadfort outrider slain," he reported. "Bolton demands we halt." Ned found Roose pacing outside his tent. "Tracks of steel-shod horses," Roose said, voice silk. "Not dead. Living men. Lannisters. Could be traitors wearing lion skin to veil true aim." Eyes lingered Ned's face. The dead are threat, but the living still game board. Ned felt anger quick, sharp. "We waste hours chasing shadows. The others press." Bolton's pale lips curved. "Shadows kill too." He gestured to 2 bound figures at tent door, cloaked in ragged lion red. When guards yanked hoods free, Ned recognized neither. Mercenaries, cheeks raw from cold. They spat curses until Bolton's knife convinced them tongues more useful than bravado. Under torment they confessed. A detachment of Sellswords under Ser Amory Lorch hired to slip north, harry winter towns, so panic, burn grain. Gold cloaks of kings landing ferried them to salt pans before sea froze. Ned's vision tunneled. Robert still lived, yet his gold cloaks served lions. Or Cersei, rather. And now Sellswords gnawed the north stores while the dead marched. He ordered hangings at dawn. Bolton smiled, though eyes remained glass. Lorch will follow, he said. And others.
Ned nodded.
We hunt men and monster alike. Hunt they did. On the hills near Maiden's Barrow, they ambushed Sellswords, looting hamlet cellars for rye. Obsidian arrowheads were wasted on men. Steel sufficed. Ned slew Ser Amory himself after duel brief and bloody, ice-shearing gilded lion helm to jaw. Bolton flayed corpses after. They had taken Stark corn, he said. They must feed Stark ravens as penance. A murmur of revulsion passed, but none challenged him. The war's mouth swallowed gentler scruples first. Bolton's flaying served purpose. Word spread among marauders. Many fled south. Yet the dead cared nothing for skins. For nights later the host sighted another barrow shuttering open, as before. This time Ned ordered firepots slung by catapult before any white emerged. Flames lit night, tar blistering ancient grass. Dragons breathed again through northern artillery, albeit briefly. The barrow collapsed inward, burying horrors unborn. Victory, but each pot was oil-begged from White Harbor's dwindling stores. Stores dwindled, but hope found new route. At dawn near Maidenpool came arrival of men in Tyrell green trimmed gold. Renly's vanguard astride horses heavy-haunched. Their commander, Ser Loras Tyrell, knelt to Ned, cloak frozen where sweat turned to rime. My lord sends 500 and his faith, he said. More follow.
Ned clasped gauntlets.
Your south is welcome in our north. Some northern lords grumbled. Southern faith thin, golden. But spears were spears. With Tyrell came wagons of preserved fruit, fine grain, barrels of lamp oil. Men cheered sugar figs more than any speech.
Ned sensed Meral flikke alleit like candle newly fed.
They set camp together. Banners of rose and wolf intermingled under aurora. That night songs rose for first time since Barrow battle. Barristan watched young knights serenade serving girls, old eyes wistful. The world yet turns, he told Ned. We must keep it turning. Ned answered with toast of northern mead. To turning, he said. The horned cup clinked Barristan's. If world turned, Winterfell felt its axle groan. On the eve of the new moon, the dead tested walls. It began with single white at dawn, arrow felled. By dusk a tide arrived, score upon score, some armored ruin of old watchcloaks, some naked children frozen in shapes of terror. Robb ordered pitch trenches lit. Flames shot skyward. Whites shrieked, recoiled. But behind them advanced shadows, tall, sinuous, more mist than flesh. They drifted through flame, extinguishing tongues with cold breath. The moat's fire dimmed where they passed. Archers loosed dragonglass, but shafts slowed as if flying through gelid water. Shadows parted, engulfed arrows, closed again. Panic rippled.
Ser Rodrik Castle hold Rob 2 innergate.
Close the portcullis, he barked. Draw them into killing ground. Drawbridge clanked, chains shrieking. The outer yard filled with dead. Arya, perched atop training tower despite orders, loosed dragonglass darts with sling. Each found mark. She counted silently, one whisper per fall. 8, 9, 10. Yet still they came. Snow churned under mass of pale feet. The yard's earth frosted deep, cracks snaking toward stone. In kennels direwolves howled. Ghost outside wall answered, tone as cold as any other's. Then from parapet left came shout, Theon. A blue-eyed wight clambered atop crenel, axe raised. Theon blocked blow with kraken shield, staggered. Arya's sling word. A black stone cracked White's temple. Collapsed, but two climbed in its wake. In tower below, Sansa prayed every god without breath for father, mother, brothers. Her voice blended with wind, lost. The attack lasted hours, until final pitch trench rekindled by oil bombs collapsed stone archway upon massive dead. Dawn found Winterfell standing, but outer yard buried in corpses too dangerous to burn until the sun's weak warmth soothed stone. Robb limped, sword arm bruised. He surveyed carnage, lips thin. "We hold," he murmured. The words tasted dust. Holdfasts farther south fared worse. At White Harbor, refugees poured in by thousand, small folk from Flint's Finger, from Rills. Lord Wyman Manderly rationed bread, but famine spectre crept. His maesters counseled culling. Instead, he opened vaults of saltcod reserved for trading fleets. "We trade for life now," he said. Within weeks, his fattest admirals cursed lean holds, but people lived. A narrow raven reached him from Eastwatch. Stannis's fleet needed grain, fire oil. Manderly sighed, sharpened quill, and penned he would send half of what remained. He sealed wax with Merman's sigil. The North does not break. Cailin's flotilla met Ned's host outside Widow's Watch amid sleet so thick sky and sea merged. She disembarked on shaky legs, found Ned waiting, beard rhymed but eyes bright. They folded into each other's arms, moment of fierce stillness amid tempest. Jon Snow stood a pace behind her, gaze finding Ned's like arrow locating target. Ned stepped forward, clasped his son's forearm, pulled him close. "You are taller," he said absurdly. Jon managed half-smile. Words would wait. Camp buzzed with reunion. River lords embraced northern cousins. Tyrell knights bowed to Lady Stark, charmed by her steel calm. That night, the commanders gathered under tent lit by whale oil lamps. Ned spread new map. 3 days' march north lies Winterfell, the dead mass outside its gates. We break them from rear. Stannis sails from Eastwatch to land east of Last River. Bolton's flank will guide him. If we strike same dawn, we crush dead between fires. Maester Luwin, recently arrived by Raven escorted by 2 silent sisters, pointed quill. If the others sense trap, they may pull back to regroup. Cailin shook head. They crave Winterfell's heart tree. Howland believes its roots pierce ley lines of power they seek. They will not retreat. Bolton's eyes hooded. Many hearts cling to Winterfell, prisoners for their hunger. Jon's jaw clenched, ghost-bared teeth. "We march," Ned concluded. At dawn, outside the tent Tyrell knights sang soft hymn to the maiden. Northmen sharpened axes, runes whispering. Reed marshfolk coated obsidian blades in pine pitch to delay shattering. The world gathered breath. Dawn never seemed so reluctant. When its pale glow finally broke, banners lifted across armies like orchard of steel. Wolf, trout, bear, kraken, rose, crowned stag, merman, Dreadfort's flayed man, though few cheered it. Ned rode at front on gray stallion, ice on back. Cailin beside him, helm under arm, hair braided tight with river beads. Jon headed vanguard of Tyrell spears and Reed skirmishers. Bolton held left, Manderly the baggage, Meege Mormont the rearguard. They marched hard, past villages now silent shells, past weirwood groves where red leaves shriveled black, past streams whose waters stank of rot. In midday the sky darkened though sun near zenith, a veil of circling ravens thick as storm cloud. Tyrell knights muttered prayers. Northmen spat thrice. The birds kept pace overhead like witness escort. By dusk spires of Winterfell flickered on horizon. Smoke curled. Torchline glimmered at walls. Ned's heart hammered memory and fear and hope. Then horns, 3 from castle, faint but distinct. He answered with 4, host approaching. Walls replied with 1, 2, then 3 again. Warning, dead still at gates. Evening's last light stretched long. Ned arrayed host on ridge southeast, torchbearers marking lines. He raised ice. Its edge caught green aurora flicker. Silence fell thick, complete. Then, from north side of Winterfell, came drum like glacier cracking. White shapes swarmed outer yard, climbing ramparts again. The battle Ned meant to flank began. He gave word. They charged. Down snowy slope they thundered, voices ragged. Tyrell horns braid floral flourish that warped to howl as northern warpipes joined, keening high. Reed darts whistled overhead, Manderley catapults lobbed firepots. Bolton infantry advanced shield to shield, silent grim. Dead turned to meet rush, ranks of ice-burnt corpses, others taller, thinner, crowned in antlers of frost. Where dragonglass struck they burst, where steel met they shattered, where fire licked they fled. The living pressed, momentum wave. Ned rode straight for Moat, now half-frozen again. He leapt shattered drawbridge, ice-carving path. Atop rampart he saw Robb, helm dented, sword gleaming. Father and son met across battlefield chaos, eyes only, moment swift as heartbeat. Then Ned turned to new enemy. A second crowned other stepping from fog, spear grown anew of shimmering crystal, this one barbed like a griffin's wing. Pointed at Ned, gesture almost regal or mocking. Before Ned could close, Bolton swept in from flank with guards bearing ironwood nets studded dragonglass. They flung net. The crowned other slashed, ice fragments spitting like hail. One shard caught Bolton's cheek, drew red line. Bolton never flinched. He stepped, flicked dagger obsidian thin as needle, launched it. Blade buried in other's abdomen. Shards spidered outward. Ned surged then, ice two-handed, broke spear, sheared creature from collar to hip. It disintegrated, crown spines drifting like snow. Bolton met Ned's eye, crooked bow. Was that gratitude? Hunger? No time. Horde pressed. Night deepened. Torches cast flickering nightmare tableau. Tyrell spears formed bristling phalanx along inner ward, holding gap open. Wildlings recently sworn to Stannis burst through postern to join melee, roaring old tongue curses. Giants among them wielded tree trunks set aflame, smashing dead like dolls. Robb's wolves gray wind and ghost tore whites by throat, ignoring cold. Stannis barreled through shattered north gate at head of Eastwatch garrison, banner of fiery heart fluttering. He charged straight at an other directing ranks atop parapet. Lightbringer? No, only castle-forged steel, yet in Stannis's hand the blade shone orange from brazier fires. He hacked creature's arm, missed, but Davos behind slit heel with dragonglass. Other fell, Stannis decapitated it clean. 2 Kingslayers in 1 fortnight, Ned mused dark. But dawn neared and still whites poured. Supplies dwindled, arms numbed. Meege Mormont bled from shoulder, still roaring. Barristan's cloak gone entirely, but sword red-hot. Jon, cut along brow, fought beside him, faces of 2 generations mirroring grim resolve. Cailin rallied river spears to plug breach Lugh. FT by collapsing tower, everywhere living strained. On Godswood side, shadows glided among heart trees' roots, others slipping unseen. Bran, though commanded to crypts, knelt by pool in trance, eyes white. He sensed them first. In his dream he soared as the ravens above, saw cold men approaching. He gasped back to body, shouted. Hodder, loyal, lifted Bran onto back. Ran. They burst into courtyard where Arya fought. She saw Bran's eyes, followed his point to Godswood. The heart tree! She screamed, voice lost in roar. Ned heard. He wheeled horse, spurred through melee, shouting for guards. Jon glimpsed him, followed. Catelyn too. They reached Godswood gate to find 2 others within, circling Weirwood like priests around altar. Their arms raised. Frost branches crawled up trunk. Sap bled red icicles. Ned charged, but ground froze, horse legs shattering like glass. Ned rolled off, came up on knee, ice ready. Others advanced. Jon darted left, dragonglass dagger in hand. Catelyn unslung crossbow of reed make, obsidian bolts included. She fired. 1 bolt whizzed wide, struck Weirwood, embedded with hiss. A vein of ice cracked where bolt sank. At that crack the heart tree itself seemed to wake. A moan deep as earth bubbled from roots. The Weirwood's red eyes glowed. Leaves shivered though no wind. A light, ruddy and wild, pulsed from bole. The frost-climbing trunk shuddered, retreated. The others froze, head tilt unnatural as if hearing.
Nedløgd.
Ice bit first, Jon's dagger found second. Both creatures shattered almost simultaneously, fragments singing like crystal bells. Silence trembled. Sap dripped, bright red. Bran slowly entered, hotter behind. He touched trunk, pressed palm over obsidian bolt. Eyes rolled back white. A wind swirled inside Godswood, scattering leaves high. They spiraled above pool and out over wall. Red snow against black sky. Outside, battle tipped. The whites faltered, movements jerking. Those fighting living slowed, heads twisting north as if listening. One by one they collapsed, limp marionettes. The few others still standing shrieked, sound cracking stone, turned north, vanishing like mist. Within heartbeats battlefields stilled, save moans of wounded living and hiss of dying fires. Men dared not cheer at first, fearing trick. But whites did not rise again. The dead lay dead. A murmur grew, rose to ragged cheer. Some wept, some embraced, some sank to knees. Ned stood in Godswood, leaning on ice, breath pluming. Jon wiped blade, eyes searching fathers. They shared a look beyond words. Gratitude, shock, exhaustion. Bran sagged in Hodder's arms, eyes fluttering normal. "They are gone," he whispered. "Gone far." "For how long?" Cailin asked. Bran's gaze lifted to swaying leaves. "For now." And for now was enough. They carried wounded to Great Hall. Maesters moved among them. Luwin, Pycelle's last capable apprentice, having ridden north. Even Davos supplying splints learned at sea. Barristan collapsed on bench, head bowed. Stannis accepted cup of warm ale from Robb, drank, grimaced. "Ale unlike any in Stormlands," he said. Robb half smiled. "Cold builds flavor." Dawn cracked at last. First true gold in weeks, slicing clouds. Snow stopped. Steam rose from battlefield. The living walked out to collect dragonglass shards, burn corpse piles. Ravens circled but did not land, as though confused.
Ned climbed battlements, surveyed realm.
Aurora had faded, leaving pale blue. He felt hollow, yet inside that hollow a spark. Survival, maybe victory. He turned to Stannis, Barristan, Cailin, Robb, Jon. "This night will live in tales," he said. "But the tale is not done. The wall still stands thin. The realm bleeds, and lions yet stalk." Stannis nodded. "Winter's teeth broken, but winter's hunger remains." "Then we feed the living," Cailin said. "We rebuild," Robb added. "We remember," Jon whispered. And Bran, arriving with Hodder, placed hand on stone parapet. "We watch," he said. Beyond horizon ravens wheeled, and somewhere across narrow sea a dragon's roar split dawn. The wheel turned still. The snowmelt ran pink in the ditches as men dragged corpses beyond the shattered gates of Winterfell and heaped them in pyres as tall as the first keep. Gusts off the Wolfswood carried the stench eastward, where it mingled with the reek of trampled manure and burst lamp oil. By evening the wind itself smelled of battle, a raw and living thing that refused to blow clean. The great hall thrummed with low voices, clink of cups, rasp of whetstones. No songs rose now, only the business of surviving day after doom. In those hours even joy felt like trespass. Eddard Stark moved among the wounded, pausing at each pallet to clasp a hand, to hear a name for the death roll or a whispered request for a blade buried with its owner. Too many faces he knew, more he did not. A Glover archer begged him deliver farewell to her daughter in Deepwood. A Tyrell squire, fair of hair and no older than Bran, asked only that his saddle be burned so no wight might ride it if the night returned. Ned promised both, thinking that promises grew heavier than armor and never lay aside. Cailin walked with him, sleeves dark with dried blood where she had bound wounds until maesters wrested the linen from her shaking hands. Each glance toward Ned carried unspoken tally. Which of ours lives, which is gone, which may yet fade before dawn? But every time her gaze met his, the numbers turned weightless. They were together. The children yet breathed. The north still stood. In the ledger of fate, that balance sufficed for now. Robb hovered by the dais, gray cloak pinned with twin direwolf heads. One silver for House Stark, one black for the silent watchers beyond the wall. Around him clustered the young captains who had bled beside him through the siege. Theon Greyjoy nursing a blistered shield arm. Ser Roderick Castle propped on crutch. Meege Mormont's oldest daughter Lyra with face soot from burning Targools in the yard. Their eyes tracked every movement of the hall, wary and hot, as though the stones themselves might rise against them. At the long trestle's far end Stannis Baratheon sat swathed in a threadbare cloak of dark wool, Lightbringer cradled across his knees like a guilty conscience. He drank from an unlidded horn, each swallow grim as penance. Beside him Davos Seaworth spoke in low tones with Lord Commander Jeor Mormont, their shoulders bowed over a scrawled roster of the wall's depleted companies. Flicker light caught in Davos's weathered face made him seem half shadow, half man. Barristan Selmy dozed upright, armor unstrapped yet still worn, as if surrendering the white steel even to sleep would shame him. A pair of Karstark boys, too young for battle, too old to be children, leaned nearby, trading morsels of roasted hare. In every corner the living touched shoulders, reminding themselves they were not alone. Ned and Cailin reached the hearth and found Jon Snow kneeling beside Bran. The younger boy's face glowed bright from the fire, eyes heavy with exhaustion yet clear. Ghost lay with his head in Bran's lap. Grey wind loomed behind Jon, ribs traced in drying crimson. Bran's small fingers tangled lost in the white wolf's fur, stroking in steady rhythm. "You saved us," Ned said, voice rougher than he intended. The words could have fallen to sun, to wolves, to the boy who had bridged waking and whatever realm the heart tree ruled. He was not sure Bran fully heard. The lad turned his gaze on father, eyes impossibly ancient, and whispered, "The roots remember who bled for them." Jon's brows knit at that, but he touched Bran's shoulder, gentle. Outside, dusk lengthened toward midnight. The pyres kindled one by one along the inner ward, pillars of fire too fierce for the snowfall to quench. Sparks leapt to kiss parapets charred black. Smoke twisted into shapes that seemed to watch before unraveling into banks of night. Ned climbed the guard stair and stepped onto the battlements. The air burned his lungs, so heavy with incense of death that even the ghost smell of weirwood sap clung faint. He breathed anyway because breath still answered him. Below, soldiers and wildlings worked side by side, feeding the fires. He saw a giant, Mag the something he recalled, hefting white limbs into flame while a manderly priest blessed the pyre. He saw umber spears rest crossed atop a mound where their dead ringed its base like roots. He saw ironborn stacking their own, eyes hard in lamplight, no prayers, only silent nods. A tapestry of the realm stitched in pain and perseverance. Boots scuffed stone behind. Stannis approached, cloak snapping in the bitter wind. "They will return," he said without preamble. "Their defeat feels incomplete." Ned's breath frosted. "Agreed. How long?" "I don't know," Ned admitted. "But before they gather anew, we must mend the wall, gather wheat, forge more glass than this land has ever mined. And we must face a south still brimming with hungry blades." "The Queen," Stannis said, mouth align. "My brother's wound festers. Pycelle bleeds him, but will not bleed treachery from heart." His voice cracked, nearly lost in the wind. "If Robert dies while we tarry here, a lion cub will rule and the realm will follow its mother's claw." Ned studied the pyres. "Would you have us leave now? Ride south to seize the throne while the ice sets again behind us?" Stannis bristled. "I would have justice. Robert's son is no Baratheon. The realm must know." Yet, he exhaled white mist. "I see tonight what justice demands. The dead care nothing for crowns." Ned gripped the crenel. "Help me hold the north, my lord. When spring stirs, we will march together. North again if the darkness rises, south if needs. But not until those walls behind us hum like a song of steel and flame." Stannis's jaw set. At last he nodded once, emotion jagged as broken antler. "Dragonstone's fleet brings seed grain and stone. Eastwatch has quarry, we have ships. I will not sit idle while Lannisters sip arbor gold." "Nor I," Ned said. They stood a moment longer, two men bound less by friendship than by the geometry of necessity. angles intersecting at duty's center. When Ned descended, he found Cailin bent over a rough table with Meege Mormont and Howland Reed, drawing lines of defense across a fresh-scraped hide 60 leagues to a side. "The free folk swear truce," Meege growled, voice hoarse. "Leave them land in the gift west of Queen's Crown, and they'll guard it." Howland traced peat marsh channels. "We can flood these flats with a day's work, hamper any new approach." Cailin nodded as though born to command marsh and mountain both. Ned watched, pride twisting warmth through exhaustion. He felt equal parts blessing and warning. This war forging new leaders at horrifying pace. In the days that followed, Winterfell became a forge of its own. The broken drawbridge was lifted by giants and riveted with ironwood beams. Masons chipped away rime to rebuild merlins with slots for the dragonglass scorpions Tyrell engineers devised. Umber ox teams dragged felled weirwoods to mill into poles for palisades beyond the moat. Barristan drilled mixed companies, wildlings and Tyrells, Northmen and Stormlanders, until their footwork matched despite accent or oath. At dusk, Bran sat beside the heart tree, watching with eyes that seemed to glaze silver in torchlight. Sometimes ravens flocked to the godswood and perched silent. Sometimes they followed Bran back to his bedchamber, settling on rafters until Maester Luwin shooed them out with broom and muttered prayer. Messages winged south daily. To Renly at Bitterbridge, "Your spears saved the day. Send more seed and mules." To White Harbor, "Shipbuilders required at Queen's Crown. Freeze may last. Construct sledges." To Dragonstone, "Stonecutters and maesters versed in Valyrian glyphs. For glass mines readied in Skagos." Ned wrote each himself, sealing with dire wolf and a smear of his own blood upon wax. Old tradition to mark missives born of war. One raven brought strange news. Daenerys Targaryen across the sea had birthed a child that did not live. Yet legends claimed dragons burst from pyre, alive in the ashes. Ned read the parchment 3 times, then tucked it beneath his jerkin. Fire made flesh felt distant as dream, yet the north had witnessed ice given breath. Balance, perhaps, or omen. He would speak of it when world calmed, if it ever did. On 10th evening, Robb gathered commanders in the solar. Candle stubs flickered bronze over maps. "Our scouts sight no others north of Long Lake," he reported. "The dead left behind mounds we still burn, but the thing that guided them retreats. Father, we could pursue, press advantage, and thin our ranks while frost still grips each sword?"
Ned countered.
"We fortify. We teach every child above 7 to fletch glass. We store lamp oil," Bolton murmured. "Fear festers in waiting. A man kept idle wonders if ghost tales outweigh hungry belly." Cailin met Bolton's gaze, voice like steady river. "Then we do not keep them idle. Every village will rebuild watchtowers. We dig greenhouses beneath hills warmed by braziers of charcoal. The reeds showed me how their mummers marsh grows tubers in peat through snow. Tyrell envoys volunteered seeds hardy in worst reach of crownlands. Manderley pledged fishermen to break sea ice daily for fresh catch. Even Theon proposed ironborn longships raid whale pods beyond Broken Branch to supply oil." Robb clapped his friend's shoulder. "See, we are not idle. We are winter smiths." Plans spun until candles drowned in wax pools, until maps sagged heavy with marker stones for tasks rather than foes. When all departed, Ned lingered, pinching wick between fingers. Cailin stayed also, hands wrapped round cooling cup. "Do you believe we have one?" she asked. "We survived," he answered. "Winning may be a story for singers." She gave half a smile. "Then let the singers come north. I would like to hear one again." He raised her hand, kissed cracked knuckles. "When the hearths burn bright with spring, we will feast. And who among us will still fit a feast day tunic?" she teased. He almost laughed. Word of Robert came on wings soon after. The king failed to wake, fever draining color from cheeks. Queen Cersei held court on his behalf, flanked by gold cloaks. Renly's Stormlander levies reached the neck, guided by reed outrunners, but at Bitterbridge Ser Loras remained, beseeching Highgarden for more barley seed. Meanwhile, rumors whispered that Jaime Lannister had vanished from the capital, last seen riding west with 100 companions sworn to gold. Ned rubbed brow upon reading. A lion stalking unsupervised boded ill. Yet concern for capital could not eclipse northern immediacy. Spring remained rumor. Each dawn the ravens croaked heavier, ice loud within cause. The wall's rangers wrote of fishers appearing again at night fort despite braceworks. Stannis sailed salvage timbers upriver, but storms harried voyage. Eastwatch's granaries groaned at limit, wildling children lining walls for crust of stale oatcake. Still, life stirred where despair once lay. In Wintertown bakers uncovered yeast they had coaxed from last summer's grapes, dough rising over coals. Reed waterwives brewed marsh tea to stave lung rot. The old God's Grove hosted marriages of those who had faced death and refused part again. One morning Bran found Arya weaving thin willow wands into cage shapes. "What's it for?" he asked. "Traps," she said, tongue between teeth. "Snow hares like dandelion root even in winter. Hotter will set them along warm springs." Bran nodded and told her he dreamed of direwolves digging dens near such springs. 5 pups strong, all white as snow except one black as midnight. Arya laughed. "I'll tame the black one," she promised. That night the moon hung full and swollen, washing battlements silver. Jon Snow stood atop the east tower with Samwell Tarly, arrived with ravens to assist Luwin, charting constellations on fresh vellum. "More stars each clear night," Sam remarked, breath fogging Quill. "As though skies open wider." Jon traced outline of the ghost wolf, brightest star cluster. "Or perhaps we look harder. Now we know dark truly lives between." Below, in the courtyard, Bolton patrolled with silent men whose flayed sigils now bore pale band of cloth stitched over skins, an uneasy truce between lord and consciences of allies. Some muttered that he flayed no one since Barrow battle. Others feared he waited for spring. Ned kept watch nonetheless, trust tempered by frost. And always the heart tree watched. Its wound, the obsidian bolt Arya fired, healed slow, bark puckering around black glass like lips sealed over secret. Bran sat there often, unmoving. One afternoon Ned approached to see his son tracing runes in the snow with twig. They resembled the glyphs etched in dragonglass shards. Ned's breath caught. "What do they mean, Bran?" The boy looked up, expression remote. "They are doors. Some open only one way." Winter's hold tightened again mid-moon. A blizzard engulfed northern roadways. Supply carts stalled. Glover riders lost 3 men to frost between Deepwood and the castle. Yet in that same storm a messenger reached Winterfell from the Sister Isles. Claiming ships saw a pod of leviathans breaching near Lonely Light. Beasts thought long vanished. Ned considered omen. Deep things surfacing after ages below. Perhaps not all such risings boded ill. In the library Stannis's Maester Pylus pored over scrolls with Maester Luwin, searching for mention of ice-crowned creatures felled beside the heart tree. One parchment in faded Valyrian hinted of pale kings, birthed where ice meets wind in graves of the first giants. Pylus translated haltingly. "Slay the Doom Lord and his coterie will fracture, but should one crown remain unbroken, dread will reform in 9 times 9 shadows." Luwin frowned. "Crown, we shattered too." Pylus shook head. "How many exist? None say." Ned overheard and ordered every scouting party to hunt for traces of spined helms in snowfields north of Long Lake, though few ventured far. The scouts' return brought word of luminous trails in sky, faint as lantern filaments, icy comets some called them, stretching from horizon to deep north. One veteran claimed they marked road for the others, a ghost bridge across Aurora. Another said dragons of ice soared there. Whatever truth, fear budded anew each retelling. Robb countered fear with labor, pushing crews to finish dragonglass kills hewn into basalt bluffs. Tyrell alchemists taught mixing lamp oil with powdered lime to fashion jars that splashed fire across ice without wind snuff. Wildlings laughed, saying greenfolk finally learned tricks of then, but they embraced weapons all the same. As weeks folded one into next, the fortress changed. New towers rose of timber and rough-cut stone. Rampart tops extended along earthen bastions ringed threefold. Inside, glasshouse tunnels warmed by braziers sprouted rows of green. They called them winter wells. Children fetched meltwater to sprinkle seedlings. their laughter echoing brighter than any bell. Still, beneath that sounds of forging and planting lurked darker tones. One night a guard vanished from northern Barbican. Next dawn his body found, throat blue, eyes crusted crystal. No white tracks in fresh snow, no shadow seen. Bolton examined corpse and pronounced blade of mortal steel did deed. Some whispered of spies left by Sel's words, others blamed restless ghosts. Ned posted double watches, but unease gnawed. Another raven arrived. Robert Baratheon had breathed last, lungs drowned in his own rot. Cersei crowned Joffrey at dawn in great September. Lannister banners draped every spire from Lion Gate to Street of Flower. Pycelle's letter bemoaned loss, spoke of orderly succession, begged the North to send fealty. Stannis read, face stone. "A bastard sits my brother's chair," he said, voice scraping. "And a mother's bile feeds the kingdom while men freeze." Ned felt weight of oaths tighten like early frost. "The realm cannot fight itself," he said. Stannis's eye burned. "The realm already wars. We must choose whether to swing sword or shield." Within a day, ravens bore 2 missives south. One, Ned's, invited all great houses to council at Riverrun come first thaw, to weigh proof of Joffrey's birth and choose path that spared realm's second doom. The other, Stannis's, named himself rightful king and demanded oaths anew. Ned did not attempt to blunt Stannis's hammer. Some truths rang only when struck hard. Reactions returned quick as hawks. Renly wrote he would attend Riverrun but doubted cold counsel could quell hot blood. Ser Edmure sent word that the Trident still held but Lion's mast west. Manderly's ships met storms off Skagos. 4 lost, goods afloat. No word from Lisa Arryn, her gates remained shut. The sands of Dorne answered not at all. At Winterfell the news fell like stone into pool whose surface had just calmed. Theon scowled, muttering Ironborn could raid Lannister coastlines while Lions faced upriver foes. Bolton's eyes gleamed with opportunities. Tyrell knights exchanged whispers of garden alliances. Ned felt their ambitions swirl, a deeper storm than snow. He convened full council. Fire roared beneath iron chandeliers as lords and captains crowded the great hall. Ned spoke first, voice steady. "We slew white kings, but their shadows linger. We cannot drop shields to chase crowns. Yet we must answer falsehood with truth." He laid out Garrett's ledger of lineage, Jon Arryn's discovery. Proved by Maester's seals, Joffrey born not of Baratheon blood. Murmurs grew. Stannis rose. "The Iron Throne is mine by law of gods and men. Those who deny invite dragonfire or ice both." His glare swept crowd. Robb stepped beside father. "The North will not kneel while winter rules," he said. "But we will not shatter realm for pride. Give us spring. Prove your claim before council." Stannis's lips thinned. "Spring may birth graves."
Ned intervened.
"We send envoys south to bear evidence. We defend wall meantime. If Queen sends host north, we answer." Meej banged pommel on floor. "Aye." Reed nodded. Tyrell envoys conferred, then bowed. Bolton remained silent. Later that night, Ned found him standing before a new Flayedman banner, fresh-dyed burgundy dripping red. "Will you ride to council?" Ned asked. Bolton tilted head. Boltons attend only when survival seats them. Perhaps realm's greatest wound festers south. "And your knives could help heal?"
Ned challenged.
Bolton's smile cut thin. "Sometimes rot must be paired." Ned left uneasy. Days stretched. Snow relented some afternoons, brittle sun glancing off fortified walls. Children skated on iced moat edges under Archer watch. Samwell taught village youth letters, copying lists of seed stores. Arya drilled with slender dragonglass spike she named Frostfang, under tutelage of Barristan, who insisted every warrior learn measure of restraint. Jon patrolled forest fringe, ghost ranging far. Sometimes he returned with word of new graves disturbed, footprints shaped like water run thin, as though memory walked. One dawn Bran summoned council to Godswood. The boy stood unaided beside Hearttree, hotter a step away. "Dreams come thick," he warned. "The pale things gather beyond Skirling Pass. building ice roofs over caverns. They hunt giants, take their bones for towers. Stannis frowned, Mormont nodded solemn, reports matched ranger tales. Bran placed palm on bark, breath misting. Doors are closing. We must seal ours before world becomes one night. Child's words, but men listened. That eve Ned rode again to Eastwatch, urging Stannis's masons hurry sea ice piers for supply. He dispatched Howland Reed with company of marsh warriors to scout Skirling Pass. He sent Meege Mormont north to Bear Island to teach fisherwives craft of glass arrowheads. Every decision felt blade-balanced on nail. As moon waned to sliver, watchers on the high tower sighted first thaw cloud rolling from south. Warm rain drummed charred stones, cutting through soot crust. Steam hissed from walls as snow receded inches. With it, smell of rot deepened. Pyre fields required fresh lime. Yet peasants emerged blinking, faces turned upward to soft drops. Children stomped puddles. Life sniffed possibility. Still, warnings rode in. Lannister host crossed Red Fork, banners of Red Lion gold bright. Stormlands split between Renly and Stannis. At Duskendale Sellsails hired to harry White Harbor galleys. Ned stood before map, candle guttering, thought of wheels grinding. Ice, fire, ambition, despair. All turning. Could one realm bear weight? Cailin joined him, slipping arm round waist. I dreamed of Riverrun in summer, she said. Trout leaping the tumblestone. Father laughing. Ned laid cheek to her hair. We will see Trout leap again. They held silence, grieving what might be yet cherishing slender threads of hope. On equinox morning, council broke bread at dawn. Steel winked on every breast. Ned named Robb steward of Winterfell. Cailin would ride south with Edmure's escort to gather river lords. Stannis departed with Davos to Eastwatch, Lightbringer swathed. Reed columns slipped into marsh. Tyrell envoys readied caravan of seed grain. Meage's daughter Lyra took command. Bolton lingered, promising to secure Dreadfort, then follow. Before departure Ned gathered his children beneath Hearttree. Snowflakes returned like thoughtful coda to fading winter. He knelt, pressed kiss to each brow. Robb's stubble, Sansa's softness, Arya's unruly strand, Bran's cool skin, Rickon's wild shock. Jon stood apart until Ned pulled him into fierce embrace. A Stark stands the wall soon? Jon asked. Ned nodded. But not until South Star sets. You guard them meanwhile. Jon's eyes glistened. Ghost nuzzled Ned's hand. As columns formed at gate, horn sounded, one blast, then second, then third, not of alarm but of farewell. Winterfell's garrison lined parapets, spears raised. Cailin turned in saddle to wave, blue cloak snapping. Bran on Hodder's shoulders answered. Arya shouted, voice lost. Robb watched father move through gate. For first time Ned saw his boy as young lord, weight of castle in gaze. Beyond walls, the road unfurled muddy and long. The caravan wound south, banners bright against gray thaw. Ned glanced back once, saw Winterfell tall, smoke curling gentle not from war but from forges shaping plows anew. He breathed, felt heart steady, set eyes forward. Ahead lay Riverrun's council, Lannister intrigue, crownless kings. Behind lingered ice that walked. Between men and women he loved carved space for dawn. Ned tightened cloak, whispered to northern sky, we stand. The wind carried word across fields, through burnt trees, over wall fissures where rangers mended, over seas where dragons stirred. It echoed in the Hearttree's red mouth, and for one fragile instant the old gods seemed to breathe answer. Quiet, but there. The convoy pressed on. Snow fell softer. Somewhere in tangled haze of future wars, crows circled a throne of melted swords, children sang of wolves in the snow, and in distant lands flames painted clouds the color of copper. But in that moment, on that road, the only truth that mattered was step after step, breath after breath, life insisting on itself against the dark. So they marched and winter watched, and the story walked with them, pages still unwritten, quill poised in hand of gods and men alike. Rain fell thick as iron nails along the King's Road, drumming helm tops and wagon hoods with a relentless clatter that swallowed speech. Eddard Stark rode beneath it, cloak darkening to sodden black, fingertips numb upon the reins. The column pressed southward in single file where the mud ran deepest, hooves sucking free with each pace like great beasts smacking their lips. Farther back the Tyrell ox trains lurched and groaned. Nearer the vanguard, Howland Reed's marsh riders glided along ditches where the water sloshed ankle-deep over flagstones laid by hands dead before the conquest. Ned could scarcely see them through the curtain of gray, yet their presence threaded the air, loose arrows knocked, spears sheathed in sodden rush. A fortnight had dwindled since the break of Winterfell's siege, and every dawn since had arrived damp and chill as if the spring itself mistrusted its welcome. The nights remained sharp enough to glaze wagon axles in frost. The days sagged with rain heavy enough to birth new channels across the barrowlands. Men cursed weather worse than they had cursed ice demons, for beasts of myth at least died to blade and fire, while common rain seeped into every seam and chafed flesh raw. But neither curse nor prayer slowed the march. Robb's charge to steward Winterfell weighed on Ned's mind like a stone in a sling. The sooner he untangled the southern knots, the sooner he could return north to brace for winter's next surge. Cailin rode near the head of the supply wagons, her hood pulled low, a leather roll of sketches clutched in one hand. Drawings of the new rampart works, the greenhouse vents, the lime pits, each notation edged in her meticulous script. She bent over them whenever the rain slackened, adding footnotes for the builders at Moat Cailin and Deepwood. Use river pebbles and mortar, set vents against prevailing wind. Every plan and anchor tying her thoughts to Robb, Bran, Arya, Sansa, and the youngest, Rickon, already fierce as a cub. Howland Reed sometimes paced his mount beside her to discuss soil drainage or bogreed reinforcement. No one else dared interrupt the rhythm she kept. Behind the Tyrell grain wagons trundled Stannis Baratheon's smaller escort, carts varnished in pitch to repel the wet, carrying crates of crudely carved limestone blocks and barrels of tar for the wall repairs. Davos rode at their rear, hood half-thrown despite the rain, keeping tally on a slate. When Ned fell back beside him, the Onion Knight offered a curt nod. "Tar levels drop faster than grain," Davos reported over the hiss. "Every village begs a cask for torches." "We give what we can," Ned said. "Fire buys more life than bread some nights." Davos half smiled. "Your north bleeds flame and ice both. Southrons will scarce believe the tale." "They will have proof," Ned promised, though quiet. Knowing proof on parchment seldom quickened the pulse like a pair of blue eyes staring through snow. At dusk they made camp in a dell where pale birches leaned together like conspirators. The marsh folk spread reed mats over ground still spongy from thaw, while Tyrell pages coaxed stubborn fires with twists of scented cloth. Caitlin's cook fires churned a cod stew sweetened with dried plums, and the smell drew bedraggled soldiers until the kettle's lip vanished behind shoulders. Ned walked perimeter beside Stannis, pausing to check each post. The Baratheon torches burned with resin strong enough to hiss in the drizzle. Their smoke smelt of myrrh, pricking the nose. Stannis carried a ledger inside oilskin, and each time they halted he scratched a mark beside a name or number. Men fit to march, men laid up with foot rot, barrels cracked, oxen lost to mire. "You tally everything," Ned observed. "Only what I owe the realm," Stannis said. "And what it owes me." Ned thought of crowns and bastards and lies stacked like winter cordwood. He said nothing. The rain did all the speaking. Under a canvas lean-to that sagged like a drunkard's lip, Howland Reed knelt over a plank scratched with charcoal shapes. Ned ducked in, dripping. Mira and Jojen flanked their father, mapping the neck in coils and eddies. At the board's center lay a circle drawn thicker than the rest. "Deep marsh at Grey Gallows," Howland said, tapping. "Our scouts found cairns torn open. Bones gone." Ned gripped the plank's edge. "Whites." "Not exactly. No tracks of dead. No frostbite on the grass. But the cairns bleed emptiness the way a wound bleeds air." Jojen shuddered, eyes distant. "Dreamed of giant bones bound in ice, beating like drums." Ned nodded slowly. "We cannot linger long, then. The council at Riverrun must not delay." "Nor the wall," Mira reminded. Dream drums may march faster than men. The rain drummed its own cadence half the night. When Ned finally slept beneath his oilcloth, he dreamed of Winterfell's heart tree. Blood like molten ruby dripped from its mouth, yet the red leaves crumbled to ash. Bran stood before it, eyes white, saying, "Doors close slower than hearts." Then the weirwood split, and inside the hollow he saw Lyanna again, hair plastered to her cheek with snowmelt, reaching for him through bars of frost. He woke with a jerk, fist clenched around nothing. The next morning the column struck camp while mist still clung low. Ahead, broken stumps jutted from the muck. Remains of a gallows set up by the first men, they said, long swallowed by bog. The banners of trout and rose, direwolf and stag, flapped limp. They would pass through the neck today and emerge onto firmer banks of the Green Fork by nightfall, if the gods proved kind. Noon found them skirting a ruined holdfast. The outer palisade collapsed, timbers gnawed by rot. Ned sent Reed scouts to circle. They returned shaking heads. No sign of Lannister foragers, no sign of the dead. Only ravens perched on broken beams, feathers slicked to bodies by the damp. "Bad humors in the water," Mira muttered. They left the ruin alone. Mid-afternoon, the forward outriders signaled halt. Ned urged his gelding up the shallow rise and stared across meadow newly drained of snow. A host of perhaps 200 riders waited under dripping pines, their standard black with red twin towers, house fry. At their fore sat Ser Stevrin, weathered face sour. "Lord Stark," Stevrin called when Ned approached. "My father asks your leave to join your, council. He says Riverrun grows hazardous for a man of 90. Ned reined in. "The council meets at Riverrun on truce. He may find safety in numbers." Stevrin shifted in saddle. Lord Walder would rather numbers find him. Cailin had reached them by then, hood thrown back so rain sluiced across auburn hair. "The crossing stands on Trident's western flow," she said. "We pass Frylands. Father used to say a toll once paid holds for a generation." Stevrin's thin mouth twitched. "My father sets his own calendars." Ned weighed time lost arguing. Finally he spoke. "Ride with us. The crossing is welcome, but no toll from friend to friend." Stevrin inclined head, but the look in his eyes said friendship tallied interest like any loan. The next miles wove marsh to meadow. At dusk the skies finally cracked to westward gold, and the road firmed beneath charred brick causeway King Jaehaerys had laid. They made camp on firmer earth, and by miracle of clear weather the fires bloomed tall, sparks lifting into new blue night. The column's spirits rose. Some even hummed. Ned sat with Davos sharing salted whitefish. "If spring holds, the wall repairs will finish by mid-moon," Davos said. "If storms let ships through waters of the east." "If," Ned echoed. In a war of ifs, the first certainty often killed. He watched Stannis across the firelight reading a parchment stamped with fiery heart. "Melisandre sends visions," Davos confided. "She claims a shadow among coastal cliffs toward Old Stones, birth of forgotten fire. My lord broods on it." Ned felt cold. "I have little love for red priests and their flames," he said. "Ice we know. Fire remains another riddle." Davos grunted. "All the same, keep en or ready." 9 days after meeting the Freys, they crossed the Trident just north of Stonehenge where Edmure's outriders met them. The castle of House Bracken flew a quartered standard, Bracken and Stark side by side, the first proof the Riverlands still breathed defiance. Edmure himself greeted them in the gate yard, ginger beard trimmed ragged but eyes bright. Behind him towered Brynden Blackfish in soot-dappled mail. "You live," Cailin whispered as she embraced her brother. "Tullus are made for rivers," he answered, but his hands shook with relief. Inside the hall Edmure poured wine too precious to spare. Men toasted every house that still stood. Stark, Mormont, Reed, Glover, Manderley, Tyrell, even Fry, though Walder had yet to join. Stannis raised his cup in dry courtesy but drank water. News spilled over the table. Riverrun held though lions camped east again. Tywin's river raiders burned ferry crossings but dared not essay the moat while Blackfish commanded. Rumors said Jaime prowled Sarsfield, raising a second host. In King's Landing, Joffrey's coronation feast bled half the crown's treasury, yet gold wagons kept rolling from Casterly Rock. One messenger claimed Grand Maester Pycelle sought to recall mints of old stag coins, melted down to restamp lion visages. Stannis's jaw clenched at that. Counterfeiting crown coin is treason, he muttered. As is wearing it falsely, Ned returned. They rode again at dawn, banners multiplied by Bracken archers and Blackwood skirmishers sworn to Cat's cradle of oaths older than the pact. The rain stayed off. The road glistened under low sun like wet slate. Cailin set a brisker pace, eager for Riverrun's towers. Mira Reed told her the marshfolk believed rivers drank sorrow. Every tear spilled fed the Trident's flow and so gave strength to houses along its banks. Cailin smiled, eyes shining, and rode ahead. It was the 12th day after leaving Winterfell when they glimpsed Riverrun's red stone gleam. The fortress sat astride confluence of tumbling waters, banners flying half-mast for Lord Hoster. But new pennants had been stitched. Dire wolf beside leaping trout beneath quartered rose and crowned stag. The gates unbarred at Ned's hail. Inside the yard, Edmure's levies hustled to stable mounts, their faces hollow from sleepless watch. Caitlin's homecoming lasted mere heartbeats before they shepherded the first council into the great hall Hoster once ruled. There, beneath rafters hung with faded banners of Blackwoods and Brackens, Manderleys and Mallisters, men of 6 great houses conferred. Lord Walder Frey did attend, carried in on a litter draped in grey fur, his voice a shrill caw demanding proper food and warmer fires. Renly arrived under Tyrell guard, cloak brilliant green, smiling wide yet eyes restless. Stannis sat opposite him like granite hearing water mock stone. Edmure presided until Ned stepped forward, ice strapped across back, small leather folio in hand. He spoke of bastards and lineages, of the tome The Lineages and Histories of the Great Houses that Jon Arryn had studied, of hair the color of midnight instead of Baratheon coal, of eyes green instead of the rich blue of Storm's End. He laid copies of the pages, Baratheon and Lannister trees twined to prove false fruit. Murmurs spilled across hall. Walder Frey harumphed. Mallister Lord rubbed beard. Renly rose. If the boy Joffrey is not of Robert's seed, then realm stands leaderless. He placed hand upon chest. I, Renly of House Baratheon, born of royal line, claim the crown with goodwill of Stormlands and Reach. Tyrell captains thumped hilts. Stannis rose slower, eyes burning. Robert was eldest, I am next. By every law, the Iron Throne is mine. A younger brother's ambition cannot overrun birthright. Renly's smile thinned. Law may be older than love, brother, but love sways more swords. Growls rumbled. Lines drew in stone dust.
Ned intervened.
Oaths to thrones mean nothing if the realm freezes from north downward. Winter rides still, though wounded. We cannot spill southern BL. But while ice rebuilds, Renly answered, will ice respect our courtesy? It already presses, Ned said. Council must guide realm jointly until spring dawn, then choose rightful crown in sight of all 7, if we still live to kneel. Walder Frey cackled. Good, drag the dragons and others both to the sept. See which claims first. No one laughed. The debate churned 2 days. Read arguments of pragmatic truce balanced against Tyrell eagerness to anoint. Mallisters feared Lannister retribution. Blackwoods bore mistrust for Brackens who leaned Renly. Many eyes studied Ned, hoping Stark swords might tip scales. But he held firm. Peace until spring or doom assured. On the 3rd dawn, a raven arrowed through open shutters, midnight wings streaked with snow. A letter sealed in wax of direwolf and crowned stag conjoined. Robb's hand, dispatched by fast pigeon from Winterfell days prior. Bran's dreams speak of new stirrings. The ice things mass along Bay of Seals again, guided by figure whose crown glows black within green storm. Night's watch stretched. Word from Skagos. Villagers slain and bones borne east by sea ice flows. Ned read aloud. Silence swallowed hall. Stannis' voice broke it. Dream or no, we have seen truth. The war beyond all wars stirs anew. He faced Renly, and in his eyes flickered something like plea. "Brother, lend me your hosts. Stand with me at the wall. After, we may test crowns with clean swords." Renly's jaw pulsed, but he looked to Cailin, to Edmure's weary face, to read children whispering of drums beneath ice. At last he sighed. "The reach grows wheat, not snow. Yet we will not see harvest at all if chill swallows realm." "Very well." He drew his sword, a slender thing with handle shaped like stag's antlers, laid it flat upon table. "The south rides north under green banners. Until spring." Stannis unsheathed his plain steel, placed it beside. "Until spring." Walder Frey cackled again. "Until spring kills you both. Then the twins will choose corpse with richest funeral." But even he signed parchment pledging 500 spears. Council rose, uneasy peace hammered in place by winter's threat. Army commanders dispersed to plan march. Grain wagons rerouted to supply an enormous muster at Moat Cailin. Reed scouts dashed ahead to test fords. Tyrell quartermasters commandeered every river barge that still floated to ferry seed north. Stormland's smiths crafted dragonglass spearheads in forges of Hoster's old armory. Marshwives lathered shafts in pine pitch. Night before departure, Ned stood upon Riverrun's battlements with Brynden Blackfish, both watching river glitter under fat moon. "Your father would laugh," Brynden said. "All the realm's lords jammed in 1 yard, humbled by snow."
Ned smiled sad.
"He would call it good fishing." Brynden's eyes hardened. "Yet lions mass west. I must guard the rivers. You ride north, we part again." Ned clasped his shoulder. "Hold fast. When ice retreats, we will break the lion's claws." Ned found Cailin on garden walkway trimmed with dead rose vines. She traced stone parapet with finger. "My roots run here," she whispered, "but my heart walks roads I never foresaw." He wrapped her in arms. "When this ends, we build a new hall between river and snow, plant roses and weirwoods both." She tipped chin. "And invite lions for feast?" He kissed her brow. "Let them hunt mice elsewhere." Before dawn horns sounded. Columns formed. Tyrell green and gold, Stormlander black and gold, Frey gray, Manderley aquamarine, Stark gray, Reed mottled green, a thin line of Baratheon ships marines in mailed surcoats. Rain returned, light, as though sky itself marched. Ned rode at vanguard with Stannis and Renly on either side, an unlikely tripod of purpose. Behind came Davos, Garland Tyrell, Howland Reed astride a shaggy marsh pony, Lord Walder's 7th son bearing the twins' banner, Edmure's outriders scouting. The host snaked north along riverbank, destination Moat Cailin, where notes from Robb claimed watch beacons already lit. They marched unmarred 2 days, but on third dawn outriders returned burnt and shaken. Tywin Lannister had shifted west to threaten Seaguard and drawn part of Riverlords after him. Ravens flew to Stonehenge. Edmure seized half his knights, veering west. Ned pressed on, heart heavy. Near the border of the Neck, they found the ruins of a half-burned inn. Black lion banners left behind, challenge clear. Renly's green cloaks wanted to chase. Stannis argued for bearing north. Ned sided with Stannis, ice before gold. Renly bowed, though grudging. Frey men muttered of unpaid tolls. On the morning they re-entered the marshlands. Mist rose thick, swallowing spear points. Horses snorted, uneasy. Mira Reed appeared at Ned's side. "Earth swallows sound here," she warned. "Watch your backdrail." Even as she spoke, distant echo of horns floated. Southwest, uncertain number. Bolton's rear guard tensed. Scouts vanished into reeds. Returned dusk sang only water and herons. That night a fire flickered beyond west horizon. Single pillar of green dancing silent. Stannis stared long. "Wildfire?" Renly asked. "No," Stannis murmured. "Sorcery." Reed children confirmed. They smelled resin older than men. "Someone else hunts in our marsh," Jojen whispered. Rain halted. Frost stole back. A thin crust iced campfires each dawn before breakfast. Ned felt winter's fingers tighten again, though calendar swore spring. On 17th day they sighted Moat Cailin's crumbling towers, torches bristling like porcupine quills along ramparts newly patched with pine trunks. Robb rode out to greet them, armor burnt gold in weak sun, gray wind loping astride. Ned embraced his son before all eyes. Stannis nodded approval. Renly smiled as though seeing story set in motion. The moat proved hub of fevered activity. Wildlings and Night's Watch carpenters ripping out old causeway stones to replace with retractable bridges. Manderley fishermen butchering sea lion hauled upriver for oil. Bolton quartermasters posting billets along dike where log palisades rose. Robb led father along parapet. "We sight white outrunners each new moon," he said, "but our scouts hold them at bars of dragonglass." Ned gazed upon swamps stretching north and south. Only Fry raiders. Robb's grin crooked. "They try charging toll on our own grain." Council convened in half-collapsed tower patched with hides. There, lords of 7 houses signed pact. Armies of North, River, reach Stormlands to march in staggered waves farther north. Relieve the wall, rebuild garrisons, then sweep east across Bay of Seals to scour second host rumored. Bolton's volunteered to lead eastern flank along Last River. Ned's eyes narrowed. He bound Roose to oath under witness of Reed and Mormont. Renly pledged Tyrell carpenters to complete dragonglass forges. Stannis took charge of new fleet mooring at Eastwatch, not just Baratheon galleys but North longships reworked for ice. Jon Snow, now formally volunteered to Night's Watch, would sail with fleet once vows sworn. Before the armies parted, a Maester Falcon arrived from King's Landing. Its message bore broken wax. Tywin Lannister marched on Riverrun with 40,000, Jaime with 10 on King's Road. Cersei declared Ned Stark traitor for stealing royal grain, demanded his head. Edmure's forces pinned at Red Fork. Council erupted. Ned remained stone. "We continue," he said. "Ice first." Renly wavered. Half his lords clamored to ride back south. Stannis scowled. Davos stepped in. "If winter breaks wall, lions will freeze same as trout." Murmurs fell still. Ned summoned parchment and quill, wrote swift, to Tywin Lannister, Lord of the Rock. "Winter devours banners as readily as men. March north and share our fire or choke on your own. Choose." He sealed Direwolf and Crowned Stag, for he stamped Stannis' sign beside his own, and dispatched Fastest Raven. That night Ned climbed the battered tower alone. Stars blazed hard. Aurora flickered faint, green tendrils quivering. He thought of old Nan's tales. The last hero with sword of dragon steel, the 100 companions fallen one by one, the darkest night. He thought of Lyanna again, her voice at edge of dream. "Promise me." And he answered aloud to stars, "I do." Below, the camp stirred, horns grumbling as first companies woke to march north by moon. Robb's banner lifted in breeze. Stannis' fiery heart glowed above watchfire. Renly's green-mantled stag danced beside. 3 crowns tethered by frost and fear, following a wolf. Ned closed eyes, let wind wash through hair. Tomorrow they would pass White Knife. Within the week, perhaps, the wall. Beyond stretched night without horizon. When he opened eyes again, a raven perched on Merlin. White wings, black eyes. It cocked head, croaked one word, "Stand," then flapped into night, vanishing where the aurora touched sky. Eddard Stark watched it go, then turned and descended the stair to meet the dawn. The long cold dawn that might outlast spring, yet must be faced with open eyes. And as he stepped into Torchlight's pall, he felt, for the first time since snow closed upon Winterfell, a thin, fierce hope unfurl, like a crocus pushing through frost, fragile yet defiant, promising color on some future field.